Conservation Commission for October 17, 2019. Oh, excuse me. I've done that again. That's the minutes. My apologies. For April 3rd, 2019. And the first item on the agenda is a request for minor change in plans for the Turner property at 18 Strandway, revised pool shape. I guess Amy's going to represent or...
Don't wish the summer away yet.
I know.
So for the Turners at 18 Strandway, it's a project we recently approved for a demo and rebuild of a home. And what they would like to do is, within the footprint of the patio that's been approved, they'd like to change the shape of a pool from a lima bean to a rectangle. Seeing as how the footprint of the patio, which is a very large raised patio, seeing as how that wasn't going to change, I thought this could just be a change in plan. And this just makes sure that the contractors, everybody has the same right plan on them at all times, because oftentimes there's a lot of these little changes, and at the end of the day, you don't know which is the right plan you should be following. So I would recommend the change in plan to make this new one the plan of record for the Turners. There is no other change.
All right, thank you. Any comments, anybody? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the change in plans for 18 Strandway.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, next we have a request for amended order of conditions for Chase Street properties, 20 Chase Street, minor change to configure the dwelling and additional mitigation.
Good evening, David Little from Ryder and Wilcox. I was here several weeks ago and presented the revised plans to you, and I was advised to file to amend the order of conditions. Nothing has changed since that time. I did provide you with a colored overlay which showed exactly what changed and what didn't. There was a 130 square foot increase in the 0 to 50 foot buffer, and a 124 foot reduction in the 50 to 100 foot buffer. So, well, essentially it's the same footprint. There were minor changes. The changes did require an additional 142 square feet of mitigation, and I've shown both the changes on our site plan, and Phil Cheney revised his mitigation plan to show the increase of that in the area where the old shed, or it was a very large shed actually, where the large shed is being removed. So we're hopeful that we can proceed with these minor changes with an amended order. And answer any questions, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
And again, the project has not started. What happened was when we came to the Conservation Commission originally, we came with preliminary plans, and during the time that they went from preliminaries to construction documents, there were some minor changes, and so that's what's brought me back here.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, Amy?
The only question that I have is, compared to the existing dwelling on the site today, what is the closest point from that hard structure to the top of the coastal bank versus what you're proposing today? Because to me, it seems a lot of what you're proposing is kind of just moving things around a little bit and moving corners.
It is.
But I just want to make sure, one thing I would be interested in is making sure that it's no closer to the top, to the resource, than current.
So the limit of work did not change at all on the plan. The limit of work remained the same. The patio locations changed slightly, as you can see on the overlay I gave you. So
I think it's that north corner.
it would be the north corner, which is 22 feet away. And on the approved plan, it was probably a little further away, Amy. Let me grab it.
I was meaning proposed now versus what's existing on the site now.
Oh, well, we're,
Yeah, I think it's,
We're- oh, we're-
I could see a little bump out there where it looks a little closer than the
so
existing
we
patio.
have, presently, the bulkhead is 22 feet away,
Yeah.
and the proposed patio is the same distance away.
Okay,
And on the original project, we had a reduction of coverage in the 0 to 50-foot buffer, and we're still coming up with 421 square feet of reduction in coverage in the 0 to 50. So we still are retreating from the 0 to 50, as the commission likes to see with this project.
I don't have any other questions.
Thanks, Sammy. Carolyn, do you want to ask any questions or comments?
No, I'd just like to reiterate that it would be nice to get the construction plans instead of preliminary plans in the original application, so we don't have to come back time and again for changes.
John, any comments?
So just to summarize, make sure I understand the numbers here, is that it's still a reduction over the original in the 0 to 50, but it's an increase in the 0 to 50 relative to the originally approved plan.
That's correct. It's an increase of 124, but we still have an overall reduction of 421 in the 0 to 50 for the project.
Okay. That's all.
Do you have any questions?
No questions, no.
Mark,
No
none?
questions?
I guess I have a question that might be for Amy, but I'm not sure. It seems like we're subtracting the 50 to 100 foot mitigation from the new mitigation required for the 0 to 50.
It was taken into account, I believe, proportionately with the mitigation required, the 3 to 1 for a change in the 0 to 50 and the 2 to 1 for the 50 to 100.
Right.
So it seems to me like you are putting those numbers together, but when you talk about the mitigation that you're providing, it's taking those into account.
So we reduced coverage in the 50 to 100 by 124.
Right.
And your regulations require 3 to 1 mitigation in the 50, in the 0 to 50, and 2 to 1 in the 50 to 100. So in the box there on the little
Yeah.
sketch, so yes.
Yep, but I don't know how you feel. I guess I want to ask folks about this. It shouldn't be, you know, it's kind of apples and oranges, mitigation in the 0 to 50 versus 50 to 100. So would you just straight subtract what was going to happen in the 50 to 100?
I don't think that's what was done, but let me look.
I mean, we provided, with the original proposal, Brad, we provided 2 to 1 mitigation for what we were doing in the 50 to 100. So it would be very easy, if you want the numbers different, I can provide you with an updated landscape plan from Phil Cheney. I don't think it's a big deal to the applicant.
I agree. And I think what happened,
I see what you mean though, Brad, now.
yeah, there was a 390 required for the new mitigation, the 0 to 50, and you subtracted 248 for the 50 to 100 that was reduced. I don't think they really should be totally comparable. So I think that if you could find a way to mitigate the 390 straight up, I think that would be appropriate in this case.
I have no problem with that. Could we approve it subject to a revised plan from Phil Cheney showing the increase in mitigation?
I think so.
So we don't have to come back again?
Sure, let's discuss, well, first of all, what do you think? I mean, is
I
that,
would recommend the stipulation that it would be in the 0 to 50.
that's
That
my thinking.
mitigation be in the 0 to 50.
That's my
Wanted
thinking. Is
additional.
there's an increase from the previous plans to 0 to 50, so where do you think would be a good place to put it?
Before you ask that, are we asking for a reduction of the, in the 50 to 100?
I think that won't change.
Mitigation?
Yeah, that, I don't
Well,
think,
if we're going for straight numbers.
I don't mind if the applicant is interested in pursuing that, but I do think we should have a strict 3 to 1 for the new change in the 0 to 50, which is
Yep.
390. And so that's what I'm interested in, instead of subtracting that amount. I think we should give them advice on where to mitigate the 90 and the 0 to 50, and they can decide what they want to do in the 50 to 100, if they want to have an adjustment or have no adjustment.
I would recommend, because they do have like a kind of view corridors here, but in this area here where you have low shrubs like sheep laurel and your lowish blueberry, maybe adding into that area, going landward a little bit with that
Okay,
area,
6
with this
blueberry
grouping here. Yep,
and the 3 sheep laurel,
Yep.
expand that.
yep, and then maybe over again where you just kind of it's nice to add on to existing kind of plantings to create a larger native area. So maybe again on this part of the property, so I'm thinking here, adding into here, and then over here.
Yep, I'm following you. I think I'll still, if this is okay, I think I'll still have Phil Cheney touch base with you
That's
before he
fine.
makes the changes.
That's fine.
Any thoughts from the proponent? You represent the property, I think.
Lori Clark just arrived.
Yeah.
If I can explain, Lori, they want some additional mitigation. They want to see a 3-to-1 mitigation for the 130 increase in the 0 to 50-foot buffer. So Phil Cheney's going to need to revise his plan accordingly.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm
And
good.
any thoughts on location, or work that out later?
I think we'll work it out later. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll follow the advice,
Right.
basically.
okay. That's the only real comment, I think, of change, so we're just voting on that change, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and as long as we could have it and have time to review it prior to the next meeting, because that's when we would technically sign off on the amendment, is they would sign it at the next meeting. Oh, actually, I have it right here. So, if you can have it within a weekish,
Certainly.
that would be
Yep.
great.
We can do that.
And you can either hold off on signing the document tonight, or you can sign the document tonight, and I'm happy to share with you the plan, the revised plan,
Right.
too.
Well, I think we're all in agreement of what we're doing here, so I'll move that we approve the request for amended order of conditions for 20 Chase Street, but with the condition to have 390 feet of mitigation, square feet of mitigation in the 0 to 50. And in the contingent on seeing the plans after, later on.
Second?
Second that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you.
You
Thank you
would.
very
I
much.
won't, that way I have one less thing to sign next time. I won't release it until after we've seen everything. Carolyn? Sign that, please.
Was what? Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a butter that wanted to speak in the audience? Okay,
If you would come up to the
Please come to the-
microphone, that would be great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry for not asking earlier.
I don't have any concerns other than how close is the property going to be, and how does it vary from the property line that I'm on? And I understand we're talking about a mitigation plan that's going to be changed. Why, I'm coming in, just fresh, and it's description of things that you really need to know ahead of time. But I've tried to do my homework, and I've got both of the prior plans, but I would like to know what we just have discussed today, that is there any change about the property that is right next to my property, which is 32 Chase Street? And if so, why couldn't I not seen that before now, before the vote?
Right, well, I apologize for not calling for your comments earlier, that's my fault. But I think, if you
I think
could-
it's fine, but I mean, I just, I don't know, I didn't have this, it wasn't up on there,
Right,
and you've got information that we don't, but
It was in the file, so I don't know if you, I don't know if you came into the office to look at the file, but it was in the file.
I did, I've got a copy of the second one,
So if
but
I
not a
may,
mitigation
If you
plan.
want to give them a real quick summary, that'd be
well,
great.
if I may, Brad, so that relative to the property lines.
Yes.
Nothing's really changing.
Okay, so when that shed goes down,
The sketch that I showed you is going to, the red and the blue shows the differences.
okay?
Where the shed is going away.
Oh, yeah,
Where the shed is going away, there's going to be additional plantings going in.
oh, excellent, okay. But as I look at it on the north side of the property, there's no mitigation that's coming in at this particular point that is different from what has been listed in the two plans prior.
Just additional mitigation, the same type, but more of it.
Okay, and allowing the plants to be destroyed or protected?
No, I think it'll be an overall improvement to the wildlife habitat in that area.
Okay, and the view to look at it?
I don't think, it's in a vicinity where the shed, that large wood shed is being
Absolutely,
removed.
yeah. That'll be removed.
Yes.
And that was a gain in square footage of the house. And then there was a guest house that was removed, and that was an additional addition to the size that the house could present.
Yes.
But as far as the property between the guest house and that shed, it hasn't been changed as far as property line.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Could you put these in the file, please, there, and then finish signing?
Thank you.
And if you would like a revised plan, when we get a copy, we can make that available to you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request for determination of applicability for the Smith property at 52 North Road. A new septic system is proposed.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Stephanie Sequin, I'm an engineer with Ryder and Wilcox, and I'm representing the owners of the property at 52 North Road, and this is an application to upgrade the existing septic system. This property's on the corner of North Road and Smith Street. There's an existing two-bedroom house. It's for sale, and it has a cesspool, so the owners know that they have to upgrade the system as part of the transfer. To the rear, this is it's a large piece of property. A lot of it is wetland. We're just showing the very corner of it, but there is a lot of wetland abutting the, I guess it's a tributary to the Herring River. We've located the edge of the wetland, which is just beyond the existing dwelling. The entire property is also within land subject to coastal storm flowage. If you look at the flood map, there's actually 3 different flood elevations in this area. For the most part, where the building is and where the new system is going, the 100-year flood elevation is 11. The existing ground elevation is about between 5 and 6, so it's a pretty substantial flood zone here. We've shown the 50 and 100-foot buffers from the wetland. The only area that's outside of the 100-foot buffer is the very southwestern corner. Not enough space to get a fully compliant leaching system, but we tried to get it as close to that corner as possible. We did test holes and confirmed that we do have suitable soil there. The groundwater is, as you can imagine, pretty close to the surface, and when we put our adjustment on it to estimate seasonal fluctuation, For design purposes, we have a groundwater elevation or depth of about 3.5 feet below grade. So in order to provide the 5-foot minimum vertical separation between the bottom of the leaching system and the estimated high groundwater elevation, the new system is going to have to be built above existing grade. And because there's limited room to do that, we've specified a poured concrete retaining wall or containment wall be built around the perimeter of the new leaching system, just to get the fill that we need to install the system. So this will, the new system consists of a 1,500-gallon septic tank, a 1,000-gallon pump chamber, and then this raised leaching system. The work will occur for the most part within existing lawn area. There is some kind of shrub vegetation along one property line that will be disturbed. There's one cherry tree that will, I think the roots are going to be damaged enough that that tree will have to come down. And then there's another big pine tree that's actually outside of your well, it's in the flood zone, so I guess it's still in your jurisdiction. But those 2 trees will have to come down. But otherwise, it's all within the existing yard area. We do have several variances that we are requesting from the Board of Health. That hearing is scheduled for next week, April 9th. Otherwise, I guess that's about all I have to say, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Amy, any comments? Pretty straightforward.
I fielded a few questions from potential buyers out here, mostly about floodplain, so brought some of the commissioners out there today. While we happened to be there, since the property across the street is coming next time, we took a look at that too.
Okay.
I don't really have any questions. It's an upgrade from a cesspool to what is, lawful Title V, which is what, Board of Health would be the ones to require more, not so much us. So we would just go with the requirement of the state, which would be a Title V system here. So I would recommend approval with a -3.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Any comments? Carolyn?
No, I didn't see what else they could do.
Yeah, right. No? Jim?
Any plans to replant the trees that are removed?
I have not discussed that with, my clients are selling the property, so they don't really have the motivation, I guess. I guess it would be up to the buyer if they wanted something planted.
Yeah, I guess it is technically within the 50 to 100. Cutting down a large tree like that, it should be replanted in kind.
So another cherry tree?
I'd be open to other species, but
There's a lot of cedar in the area too. I could see clump river birch also maybe working there,
Okay.
one or the other.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's all.
Only one other point, perhaps in lieu of the replacing the tree or 2 trees, maybe some clump planting along the edge on the Smith Street side.
For screening, you mean?
Yep. May,
That's actually not a bad idea.
well, it would do 2 things. It would cover up the 3 feet of concrete that's going to be showing on the wall, and it would also replenish the vegetation. Go right down that lot line to the left, and it's kind of a win-win, leaving the other side open to the availability of ever having to work on it in the future. You don't have to remove anything going forward.
So that would be like an option, either planting a tree or doing shrub plantings?
I would prefer the shrubs myself, but it's up to everybody else.
I think
It's a
the
single
neighbor
tree?
would,
It's 2. The cherry is probably the more substantial tree. Well, the pitch pine's large, but they're pretty common. And actually, the pitch pine's outside the 100-foot buffer. It's the cherry that's within.
Okay.
I don't personally have a preference towards the shrubs or the trees, so whatever you folks want.
What do you think though, Amy? Because usually we're thinking in kind, you know, with a tree for a tree. Would there be a big cost difference if we asked them to do a bunch of shrubs?
I don't think it would be too much, because if you do larger shrubs, it would honestly be, you plant them 4 to 5 feet on center. I'm thinking beach plum or bayberry type plants right there. So I don't think the cost for a couple of those versus one tree is gonna be that much different.
Should be fairly
Almost.
close. Should be fairly close.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I clarify a thing, though? We would be asking them to do mitigation for disturbance between the 50 and 100, but we're asking them to mitigate outside the 100.
Correct.
Right about on the line, pretty close.
It's really for the tree, I think.
Yeah.
That's what we're,
The tree is a clear-cut thing.
yeah, seeking replacement. That's pretty common. But if we ask them to do something outside, I guess it's, you know, if it's agreeable to the proponent. Otherwise, we'd fall back on the tree, right?
Right.
Okay.
So that's why I was wondering if that could be like an either or, depending on.
I can word it that way if
I don't
that's,
see
if
why not.
you're all comfortable with that.
Jim, you had the first.
Yeah,
idea.
it's okay with me.
Okay.
So, the thing I noticed about that tree is it's got a lot of surface roots.
Yeah.
Which, to me, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a tree expert, but what that means to me is there's surface water right there.
Pretty close.
And it's, so I don't know whether that would affect the choice of plant there, that's all.
It could. I was, actually, after I mentioned the two, I was also thinking the same thing, and I said, well, I'm gonna add maple to that list, red maple, because it will tolerate more of a saturated soil.
Yeah.
Jim, do
Okay.
you want to tackle this motion?
Oh, sure. I'll make a motion to approve the RDA for 52 North Road for a new septic system. That would be that'd be an approval with a -3 determination, with the condition that the 18-inch cherry tree will be replaced with a species approved by the conservation agent.
Or the option of having the shrubs?
Or the option of multiple shrubs approved by the conservation agent.
Okay, so
I'll
we have
second.
a second under discussion. Any comments from the audience? Okay.
I would just say if it's gonna be shrubs, based on the length of the wall there, if you scale it off, it's roughly 4 or 5 shrubs.
Okay.
That would fit there.
Okay, so it's up to the proponent, and they'll come back and work with Amy, so, all right. We have a motion, and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the other one.
It was a beautiful day out there today.
Oh, nice.
Okay, next we have our only notice of intent tonight for 7 Great Woods Road, proposal to remove riprap, installation of walkway, and beach modifications, and they've asked, well, they haven't asked for continuance, but we
They
have to,
have.
they have.
They have, yeah, they did officially ask, but we haven't, there's been a little going back and forth with Natural Heritage from the original proposal, which had structure to it, versus the all-plant naturalized shoreline solution, kind of. So we haven't heard a definitive back from Heritage, so we can't vote tonight. So they've asked for continuance till April 17th.
April's, okay. Well, I move we continue this hearing till April 17th. Seconded by John. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
And our next thing on the agenda, she is here.
Okay, so next we have a request for an extension permit
Can you please sign this? I apologize.
for the Bray property at 46 Indian Trail Road.
First of all, I'd like to thank Amy for giving you my statement tonight that I'm going to read. I'm Betsy Bray, and I'm the owner of 46 Indian Trail. I bought the lot in January of 2016. I had hoped to build a house on the lot, but unfortunately, my circumstances changed, and I'm unable to build. I currently have the lot for sale. I'm asking for you to reconsider your decision of not giving an extension to this wetlands permit on the lot. The wetlands permit will make the lot more sellable. In reality, I doubt that the house that is on the wetlands permit will be built by a purchaser anyway. It's a hardship for me to reapply, pay to get the work done by a surveyor, and go through the reapplication process. I've been quoted $2,500 by a local engineering firm to go through the process again. I hope you will reconsider your decision and give me an extension to this permit. Many thanks. Short and sweet.
Thank you. Comments, Amy?
Sure, I'll give you so about a month and a half ago, the commission met when Mrs. Bray couldn't be at the meeting, and the commission, this was originally approved in 2013. It was a previous owner. You bought it in 2016, so 3 years later, and it did get one extension. The commission did not vote to extend it, but instead the applicant or the owner would have to reapply. I believe in your packets there, both online and I don't know if in your paper packets there's a copy of the plan of what was approved. I have one here. So just essentially, this is a virgin lot, so minimization of footprint is, what we look for versus mitigation, because you can't really mitigate when you have a undisturbed lot to begin with. So just for the commission's edification, the closest new hardscape structure to the wetland edge here, I'd have to scale it, and I thought I had it differently. It is over 50 feet. It's roughly 60-ish feet away from the edge of the wetland. The limit of work is on the 50-foot buffer, and then the closest next point would be the deck in the back. So again, you did deny it. It is still active until
Till June.
Until June, that's right. I thought it was April, but till June. Just as an aside, we noticed some trees marked out there. Are those?
Those were originally marked by the builder that I bought the property from.
Flags in good shape. I didn't even notice it
green?
before. The green flags?
The green ribbons on the trees?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
They've been there for,
they've been there for a
Wow.
really long time.
Wow, didn't look it. So, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that's it.
So it is up to the commission if you would like to keep your determination, or you do, because it is still an active permit, you can change your mind if you do see fit. It is completely up to you.
Thanks, Amy. So a little discussion, I guess. Carolyn, do you want to start?
thank you for coming. I don't see that I would change my opinion on this, because as you said, most likely the new people will come with a totally different plan. And I don't like the idea of extending a permit for 6 years. That just doesn't sound right to me. I think in all honesty, your realtor, who is very experienced, can explain to people that there had been a permit, and where the lines are, you can and cannot build. And people would, I would hope, understand and then come to us with their new plans.
Thank you for that. I've talked to several builders and also my realtor, and they've all been unanimous in saying it's really important to have a wetlands permit as a selling point on this lot, basically. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
John?
So, I'd just like to clarify the process here for myself, which is, if we were to agree with the request, it's an extension in the permit, but if any changes whatsoever were made to this, it would require a return to the Conservation Commission.
That's correct.
It could be an amendment.
Or a complete new notice of intent. If it was a different house design, it would be a brand new notice.
And can you clarify the drawing here, because there's cross-hatching?
That's gonna be area that would be seeded with a native seed mix in addition to the plantings you see.
I see. So where's the limit of any hard structure here? It's not clear.
The deck, so the limit of work, here, John, if you wanna take this. Here's the dark line's a 50-foot. This makes it a little clearer here. And it is labeled, limit of work. The 50-foot buffer.
The limit of work is on the 50,
Yes,
51, 53?
in some areas, yes, it's on the 50.
So
I'm not sure we
this
could
is
prove
the
this
limit of
today.
work? Well, that's part of my question is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
That is,
today,
yep.
you've got to be 60 feet, really.
For a structure, yeah.
Right, and so that's not clear on here.
That's because back when that permit was applied for, it was a
Right.
50-foot.
Right, yeah.
So they put the 50 on there, but not the 60. I probably have a scale. I could tell you how close it is. I could have that back for a moment, I'll tell you.
Is the scratching, that is,
What's that?
that,
Planting area.
the plant, that's all planting?
Just give me a minute here. That closest corner, just 30 feet.
What are you calling the closest corner, the northeast corner of the deck?
No, I actually think I think it's about the same, but I'm gonna check both the east, or the west corner of the deck, and then the northeast-ish corner. Just checking. That would be 68 feet
Uh-huh.
on the west side. And actually the exact same on the northeast side. So 68 is the closest.
All right, I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, my main comment is just 9 years is a long time for a permit to be open. I mean, 3 years seems generous, and 6 is a long time, and 9 seems excessive.
I think under these circumstances of me trying to sell the property, and most likely that house will not be built, as far as I know, and in terms of what I already said about it just being more sellable, it would be great if you guys would give me an extension. I'd even take a year at this point.
I do have something to say about this. 3 years and 9 years, as I see it, is still compliant with all the current regulations. Are there any differences that I'm not seeing?
Mitigation has changed, and the 60-foot, no new structures 60 feet from the resource area.
Right. But there's 68, right? Isn't that what you just said? Okay. So there's adequate space, but if there's going to be the likelihood of somebody buying that property and building to those specifications are probably slim to none. They're going to have to come back before us to make any changes anyway. As far as I'm concerned, I feel there's a disservice being done to these people to not grant an extension.
Okay. So we have an actual request. This is not a discussion item. This is a request before us.
You've already voted on it,
Yeah.
but this is, yes, it's renewed request.
Okay, so is it, I'm just wondering if if we're obliged to vote on it tonight, or if it's just a discussion item? Because we have a vote that's standing. We discussed it, the commission
I
did.
guess, what would be the, so, to make it clear to her, I would either, if you wanted to take more time, another 2 weeks to think about it or something, then you could continue, but otherwise I would recommend just for you to know that you guys vote if you feel comfortable with voting again.
Okay.
I mean, if you wanna, a couple of us went out today, if anybody else needs to go out, and we could put this off another 2 weeks, but, for you to see it if you felt that would change anything. So.
Not for me,
Right.
no. So,
Well, thank you for going out to see the lot today. No wonder, that's why you knew where the trees were marked. Yeah.
It'd been a few
Is
years since
there-
I'd been out there.
Is there any way that we can give some sort of an unofficial documentation, or that there has been
No, there's record.
previously?
I mean, there's record that there has been a permit.
There's record that there has been a permit.
Mhm.
But then it's not an active, it wouldn't be an active permit. I just
Mhm.
feel that,
Yeah, and there's really nothing, it puts, like, for me to write a letter of any sort about buildability is, I can't do that.
no,
You can't.
I wouldn't want you.
That is a huge liability and risk for me.
But the only value, if they're not gonna build this house, they're gonna have to come back to us anyway.
right.
But it's the precedent that there is a wetlands permit on this property. And as I don't want to keep repeating it about the sellability of it.
But the new owners could build this house.
They could, I mean,
Permit. Right. So we've discussed quite a bit the concept of extensions
Mhm.
this commission has, and I think this is an example of one where it got the extension to 6 years, and we're at basically 9 right now. So I don't favor an extension for this situation. So I'd like to move that we do not approve the extension for this proposal.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
We're in favor of sticking with the opinion last time.
Yes.
His motion.
you're turning me down. That's what you're doing.
Yes.
So, thank
So we
you.
have, any opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed,
Thank
so
you.
4 in favor, 1 opposed. So,
So you'll probably have to see me again, and I'll go through the permit process all over again with the same house, most likely,
well,
with the new,
you had a permit that was approved, and to me, that has to have some standing for the process you're going through. So I would think that's beneficial, that you had those plans. It's just a process we're struggling with. How often do you extend a existing permit? Things change, and we've had situations that don't come out favorable because new property owners do things that don't work out well. So I think it's best if it's a clean slate in this situation.
okay, and I'll probably be talking to Amy because I'll need to know about all the new regulations that have to be incorporated in the permit. Okay,
That's
thank you
fine.
very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Okay, so next we have a public hearing. It's a discussion and possible vote regarding agricultural lease agreements and the management of the following properties that are owned by the town of Harwich under the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. So I guess we're having a general discussion, but we have a list of the different properties. So we're going to start with Great Swamp Bog, 0 Birch Drive.
Okay, just to give you some background, Great Swamp's Cranberry Bog was an active cranberry bog for years. When the town took it over, town leased it to a gentleman. He had it for a 10-year lease, but I think after 3 or 4 years, having not done anything out there, he approached the town and asked to be relieved from his 10-year commitment. He subsequently was. Town put it out for another lease agreement again, and I stepped up and offered to lease the bog. my lease. I know you have it in front of you. I apologize, I don't have it with me. I didn't want to get into legal stuff and all that right now, so, but just the gist of it is I pay a fixed amount of money. The concerns when I took over the bog were a couple of things. One is it never had a water withdrawal permit transferred into the town's name. So to access water from Robbins Pond to grow cranberries there, you would have been required to get a water withdrawal permit. I investigated it the first year or two that I was there and tried to see if I could get the permit. The Shields, I believe, still hold it, or were not interested in transferring it to the town. Subsequently, the cranberry vines themselves started to deteriorate, and in order to keep the agricultural exemptions, I decided to use the property in a different fashion as opposed to growing cranberries. We planted some indigenous restoration, wetland restoration plants out there. I spent about, I don't know, $2,000, brought in some seedlings. Mowed off a good portion of it, planted the seedlings in there, and due to extreme vandalism and not being able to be out on the property physically, majority of those got either pulled out or ran over with four-wheelers. Being, I don't know, angry, number one, but number two, we're trying to try something else. The next step was we did about 3,600 pumpkin plants. I thought that if I were able to at least keep an eye on the property and grow pumpkins out there, the growing season is a lot shorter than wetland trees or small plants, that I would be able to dedicate time and hopefully get a crop out of there, because the harvest for pumpkins, again, are seasonally in October. Once again, due to vandalism, the first year we did it, we ended up having maybe out of 3,600 plants, 15 pumpkins. The property lends itself to a very, very difficult control, if you will, for people, especially vandals. Amy, when did you come to work here, Amy?
7.5 years ago, and
Okay,
one of the first
so-
places I came was
Yeah, one
to
of the
you.
first things that Amy and I dealt with out there, I understand that the town, and believe me, nobody in this town advocates taxpayers' monies and taxpayers being able to have rights to use the property that they buy. However, first and foremost is really the town stepping up and managing their property and taking care of the property. One of the biggest problems I had very early on is that the town decided to identify the area as a conservation-owned area, and a sign was put up that it was a town-owned conservation area. That opened it up to countless bonfires, parties, summer parties, arguments with the cops that it was a town property and kids could go there. Dumping of trash became horrendous. I tried numerous things shy of fencing it off. We did put, working with the town, and especially with the DPW, we put large boulders. I blocked off the access to the pond. My biggest concern with the pond is that I own the opposite side of the pond, and I am the sole withdrawer of water from that property. So if that pond should become contaminated, it will affect my livelihood and my crop. I am, by the way, a certified organic cranberry grower. Numerous times prior to us, me and the town working together and blocking it off, people were going down with pickup trucks, four-wheel drives, and unloading gas-motored fishing boats into this pond. Then they were getting stuck in the sandy beach, trying to pull their boat out, right up to their axles. I probably had to call in large wreckers at least 6 times over the course of the last 10 years to pull out vehicles that were stuck in there. This is not excuse by any means, fashions, or forms, but I need you people to be aware of a couple of things. Lately, last 2 years, I've had some health issues. I have had a cardiac problem. I'm still in the midst of it. I had a pacemaker installed less than 30 days ago. We're hoping that, and I'm on the road to recovery. However, the last 2 years have been for me a very personal lack of ability to attention to a lot of things, including my own residence, my own home. Many of you know, I know Amy knows, I'm trying to build a new house. A lot of stuff got put on the back burners. Great Strops was one of them. My lease is up. It's up this year, I believe, Amy? I think I have until
June 1st.
June 1st. I owe you one more payment. I'm going to probably pay it this week or next week. I usually make all my payments before the end of the fiscal year so that the town's books can be closed correctly. So I have all intentions of making good on that. However, I am very concerned of the property. And I'm concerned of the property for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned earlier, I am the sole withdrawal point of the water from Robbins Pond. It runs through my bog. So the quality of that pond affects me greatly. And have anyone doing anything in there that may be an oil spill or a gas spill or getting a vehicle caught in there or using boats with motors in them to somehow deteriorate the pond is going to affect me. So I'm very, very concerned of the future of what we're going to be doing over there. Bonfires, I don't know what to tell you. I've tried everything to try to stop them. Blocking off the road, we've done it, but they go through the woods. They get around. They get around with four-wheel drives, they get around with 4x4s. This is a very isolated piece of property, so it's very, very difficult for the town to manage it. The town police and town fire come through my property to get there if they need to go there, because they cannot access it through coming in through Eastgate. The road is too deteriorated. And again, we put some barriers up. What I would like to do, and what I would like to leave here tonight with on this piece of property, is that because, and I don't want to get too personal on TV, but because of my recent health issues, because of my age, because of the fact that I only have one daughter, who, by the way, is on her way to become a police officer, she's not interested in agriculture, I have taken the last 7 months and really looked at what my wife and I are going to do in the future. And we have all intentions of working very closely with the tech school. I own a lot of land in this town, and I am presently working with the tech school to put together a program so that in the event of my demise, some good will come out of some of the holdings that I have. I think this piece of property is a perfect situation to talk about. The tech school is close to it. By the way, I have been spoken to the tech school about this, and they're very excited about it. I think it's a threefold thing that would happen. First of all, you would have someone maintaining, watching over, cleaning up, and trying to control the bonfires there, number one. But number two, if we got them involved in Christmas trees, let's say, because that's one of my ideas. Christmas trees is a crop that will take it between, depending on how big they are when you plant them, they could take up to 6 to 8 years before the first harvest. However, fitting into the tech school program, the kids could do the pruning in the fall and in the spring, and planting in the spring, and then they could also do the harvest during school season, because obviously you would harvest Christmas trees right after Thanksgiving. We also, and I do plan on working with another friend of mine that is a veterinarian, and we're talking very closely about creating an animal husbandry program That would not be located, and my intentions right now would not be to locate that out into that particular property, but certainly incorporate my own farm and the next one that we're gonna be talking about on Main Street. I don't think it would be just to allow this piece of property to just sit there fallow again. I know that members of this board voted because of the other cranberry bog. That's fine. I know your concerns about its location and its runoff, if you will, and effects to the herring were probably one of the reasons why you went that way. This does not have that kind of exposure. Basically, this exposure is, I'm the one that's going to get hurt by it because I'm the one where the water flows out continuously through my property into the Herring River. So the other thing is the isolation of this property. There's no way the police department, the fire department, or this board, especially Amy, can be tasked with keeping an eye on this property. It is a dump site now. And between my efforts and the town, DPW, Lee Cooper and I have an excellent relationship. Guys down there and I have an excellent relationship. What I can't pick up with my machines and bring in, they come out and get. But I think if we were just to say, you know what, this is no longer a good agricultural use piece of property, we're just gonna let it sit and we're gonna advertise that people can go out and walk their dogs around there, I think in 5 years, you people are gonna be pretty disappointed. Because again, it is a very unique piece of property, especially where it's located. So if you put it out for agricultural lease again in June, I absolutely am interested in bidding on it. But I will be bidding on it with the tech school. What I would rather do is I would rather have just a nod from this board right now to say, hey, we want to hear more about this. Maybe I can sit down with Amy, sit down with Bob Sanborn, the superintendent over at the tech school, and maybe we can come forward with a plan that you won't be required to go out for an RFP. Because again, if the tech school decides to work with the town, it could be done through an intermunicipal agreement. And it's not something that you have to be bound to by the procurement laws through 30B. But if you so desire that you just want to put it out for, again, a 30B procurement thing for agricultural use, then I will, in full disclosure, tell you that because, again, of my proximity of the land that I own that abuts it, that I would be interested in releasing it again. 10 years is not enough. I don't care what anybody tells you about leasing agricultural land. I'm here before you as the poster boy for it. 10 years is not enough, and the reason why is because when I wanted to switch over to grow Christmas trees out there, I was 8 years into the lease, or 7 years into the lease, and I wasn't about to make, another $3,000 investment, plant Christmas trees, and then have it come up for lease again and have someone come in under the 30B procurement laws and be able to outbid me and reap the harvest of my trees. So a 10-year lease on agricultural land is not good practice. Could be a 10-year with a 10-year review, somehow word it. This is how I did it when I just did the RFP for the county farm. I didn't want to go out for a 10-year lease at the county farm or a 20-year lease at the county farm. So we did it for 20 years, but we did it in 3-year increments. So that every year the leasee would have to come in and at least renegotiate terms and let us know what's going on with certain parcels that he's using. And again, I did that because that particular piece of property is 98 acres. This is only 16. But when you have 98 that you're dealing with, one contiguous lot, you find that although he's leasing the whole 98 acres, he's not using it all. So the way we structured the lease is that every 3 years you could come in and redefine what areas he wanted to use and not want to use. That I could live with. But again, it's up, it's there. There were other things that I did out there. I planted a indigenous grass, and we harvested quite a bit of indigenous grass. It was my intentions to try to get the state, through its bidding process, when they award contracts or grants like the new Monomoy School, that they would have incorporated in the language of that grant that the school would use indigenous grasses in areas that were not considered lawn or front walkways. In other words, along the fence lines, along the parking lots, in between the dividers. Indigenous grasses don't require fertilizer, they don't require water, and some of them, and there was 3 species that we put out there, one of the species out there only grows to be 8 inches tall. So you could argue it did not warrant to be mowed. My endeavors to try to get the state to listen to me and maybe put some restrictions out there to make a market, if you will, for these grasses didn't go that well. It fell on deaf ears. So I guess I don't have enough pillow in the state. But in my hopes, when I did the grass projects, that again, we were going to get, especially in road reconstruction, on-ramps and off-ramps, that if we could get some indigenous grasses out there as opposed to fertilized lawns and having to go out and cut them all the time, I thought it would have been a good move for the state. Very briefly, and I won't bore you any more on this, but I also got involved in a project in which we were collecting seeds off of a certain grass that I have planted out there, and I was shipping them to a manufacturer in Connecticut, and he was infusing the seeds with a fungicide. And when they were replanted and grew new grass from those seeds, that fungicide was actually in the plant itself. And the white-footed deer mouse is known to feed on the seeds of those grasses. The fungicide that was injected into it actually made the male white-footed deer mouse, impotent's not the right word.
Sterile.
Thank you, sterile. Thusly hoping to cut down on the population of white-footed deer mice, which, as we all know, are the main source of Lyme disease. The company in Connecticut is still working on it. They're going through the EPA registration process, because we have to make sure that if an eagle was to eat the mouse, that they don't become sterile. Very, very long, a lot of paperwork and a long process. But those are things, just to give you an idea, that what I've been trying to do and been involved in out there.
Thank you very much. I think it's a really interesting concept, working with the tech school. And why don't we ask questions per property?
Yeah.
And we'll move on to the next property shortly. So we've got till June 1st to make a decision, or we want to make a decision
Whether or not to,
before then?
well,
No, you don't have
that's
to do
when
anything.
you could, yeah, you could do it before or after, but
Right.
the lease expires.
Right. We want to,
1st.
we want to have a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and just to let you know, too, I'm not going to stop going over there and picking up the garbage and taking care of the place, whether I lease it for you or not. By the way, I've been paying you, $1,500 a year to clean up trash on town property. So it's been, as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather do it for you and not pay it for it, too. So in other words, there's no huge rush. The tech school situation, I will warn you, there is a little bit of a rush on that. I've been working for the last 7 months, again, on a very, very personal note, to put this together. And the tech school was very receptive of it. If they become an ag school, if they get ag designation from the state, it will open up state and federal funding for them. I don't know if you've heard in the paper recently, but the one in Bourne is also thinking of trying to do the same thing. And they're looking at a town piece of property. I believe they're actually looking at a private piece of property, too, that abuts them. So this is not something that has not been done with tech schools, especially in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But I want to beat Bourne. So if there's any pressure, that's it.
Let's have a few minutes of questions, and we'll move on to the next property. Carolyn, do you want to start with any thoughts or questions?
I'm a little confused as to who would have the lease if the tech school was involved in in growing Christmas trees? Where-
I don't have enough, I haven't gone down that road enough.
Okay.
I think the right way to do it, and I'm gonna say this as top of my head comments, I may change my mind later, but right now, I think it would be most advantageous for the tech school to have it.
Makes sense to me.
I will work a sub-agreement with the tech school as a, I don't want to say an employee, but just a lack of a way to try to explain this, as an employee of theirs who will be designated the manager of that piece of property. And that's what I'm willing to step up and do for them, if they are the leasee. If I'm the
If they are the
leasee,
leasee, then you would be an employee, a paid employee of the.
I didn't say
tech-
paid. I said I'd be acting as kind of an employee. I'm not looking at this to get a job, by the way.
Okay.
I want that on the record. This is something that I've truly want to do, and when we get into the other piece of property, you'll even understand more why, because,
That sounds like a nice arrangement to me.
so to answer your question, that's the kind of thing that Amy and I and the superintendent and, you know, hopefully we'll run it by the town attorney, but I don't want it to be so crazy that I have to get town attorneys involved in it. I mean, you know, other than just looking at stuff and making sure we're not doing anything illegal, obviously, but, you know, I'm not looking for some convoluted 50,000-page agreement, you know?
So I just want to understand a little more about your description of your use of the property to
Yes.
date and your experiences with other people's use of the property.
That property?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I went over there when we did a site visit. When was that?
About a month ago, we saw all the pitch pines. You only saw a portion.
Yeah, I only saw part of it, but it was a part of it where clearly it had been well torn up by,
Drip bikes?
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Four-wheelers.
Four-wheelers, dirt bikes, I don't know, you know, things with tires that leave tracks. So I'm just curious about, I mean, there's, and you can see it, I'm just looking at the satellite image on Google Maps, and you can see that area, it's very
Yep.
stark in the satellite photo as well. So, but that's not even an acre right
Right.
there where it's torn up.
That's the old
Well,
sand
to
pit.
the pond side of that Google map, if you look at it, you'll notice that there were some areas that I went in. We did completely clear cut the pitch pine at least 4 times in the last 10 years. They grow back very, very quickly. And you can see there's a couple of ramps where, I mean, I could take you out there and show you. There's a couple of ramps where I go down and I have a big mower in the back of my truck tractor, and I have mowed it. Amy and I, very early on, decided to leave the very small section of bog, which is nearer the pond itself,
Yeah, this one.
and to leave that completely grown in, because both her and I agreed that that was a great area for the water or runoff or anything to go through
Yeah.
and hopefully,
Buffer.
right, a buffer, before it dumps into the pond.
So I'm just curious about a lot of things, and I guess I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure I can articulate my curiosity very well. But one is, it's a pretty big area, and what happened out there that gave you concern that other people who are using the property in ways, in unintended, or ways that the Conservation Commission, the town of Harwich did not intend, and certainly you didn't intend?
There are photos of bonfires that are 70 feet in the air.
Where
70
where on,
feet in the air,
where
that's
on
20
that,
feet over the pine trees.
so where on that property is that happening?
If you come up from the pond, just where the bog is on the right there on the left,
By the access road.
just by the access road.
So,
yeah.
over here.
That's one spot, and then the center of the sand pit.
Yeah, it's the sand pit.
Yeah, I
where
can
we-
see how people would be tempted.
I used to encourage, finally, I had to give up, and I said, listen, if you're gonna have a bonfire, have it in the sand pit. Don't have it here. They had it close down by the pond. They'd like to come down and party by the pond.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, but then my other question is, given how overgrown this is, how did you grow anything? I mean, seriously,
again,
it's a
2
serious
years,
question.
cut
That
pitch
is, if you're
pines come
trying,
up-
if you're
pitch-
trying to grow pumpkins, or you're trying to,
When I'm growing
Which is a
pumpkins, we
field
cut
crop,
them,
right?
we cut the pitch pines down. I'm talking, that was 8 years ago. We cut them all down. We mowed it, we mowed everything down flat. I went in with a post hole digger and I drilled holes, about that deep, and put some loam in. We didn't use any fertilizer at the time, and then planted in those little spots.
you
And
have
then
to
they were
pull
5.5
stumps or
feet.
anything?
No. Nope, they were 5.5 feet apart, or 6 feet apart, the rows, so I could mow in between them with the mower.
And what went wrong? That you only got 15?
Kids pulled them up, ruined them, drove their four-wheelers over them.
So, and where was that in this? If you could just, I'm sorry, I'm taking time here, but I'm just.
No, you
trying
need to
under-
understand, and we
I'm
can
trying to
always, we can
understand
do a
what-
group
what-
site visit out there
What went
too.
on here? So if you look
This whole
here,
area right
Did,
here,
but
this
you didn't-
entire whole
We
area,
didn't,
all of this area right here,
That whole
except for
thing.
this right here.
You
This
had
is
that
very,
whole
very
thing?
thick.
that's where we were.
This was
Leo.
cut, all this was clear cut, all down here, right across there.
So
There's
the
an
north,
access ramp here, there's an access ramp here, there's an access ramp here. By access ramp, oh, I'm sorry.
that's all
I
right.
mean, that's where I could drive my tractor down in.
all they saw was up in that northeast corner where it was very
I'm
thick.
sorry.
You just-
And the
I
sand
think I
pit
took the
area.
edge of it.
So we were here.
Yes, you were. Yep,
Yeah, I
right.
have to-
And that's
So in
all
other
you
words-
saw.
All this
thick.
lighter brown area was completely clear cut where the X is, and up into about right here. All this was completely clear cut.
3
But
years
when we were
ago?
looking, we were standing up here,
Okay, looking out over this,
over the larger pitch pines now.
over the, so that,
You didn't see the area that he had cut a little more recently.
okay. That is more
Sorry, do you have
believable.
a thing on pointed to?
I'm real familiar with it all.
Yeah, it's just all this brown
Yeah.
area in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
there's
this
no-
I
So
didn't touch at
this
all.
area,
This
it's
corner here
actually-
just was
You can
always
see it
really
on the
thick.
aerial, it's
Yeah.
But
sparse.
this actually
More
grew in
sparse.
very quickly, because there's a sand pit.
Yeah.
But all of this down here, everything that you see that's kind of light green.
Yeah.
Confused. What's the limit of the bog? The bog,
The bog itself is the bog with the access road around it. That's
Right.
what, the property itself is all of this. That's part of the conservation area, if you will. But the lease includes the bog and the access roads around it.
and so all of this land too?
Nope,
We're
it, nope. So the lease is only the bog itself and then that little road around it.
And this
That's the lease.
is- Okay.
The land from the edge of the bog
Right.
heading up to Birch Drive is very, very steep. It's not usable for agricultural
Yeah, it's-
purposes.
Is that in fact what you understood the lease to be, just the bog itself?
The access road around the bog and the
And
bog
the
itself, the pump house,
Yeah.
what do you call it? Again, John Chatham and I had a understanding, if you will. You know, it was never our intentions to block off the pond so that people couldn't use it. However, we wanted to block it off so that people couldn't drive down to it.
Right.
Okay, somebody wanted to come with a canoe or a small paddle boat, not a problem. They can carry it from the little parking area that we developed,
Remember?
yeah, and then walk down that way. The biggest thing was trying to keep vehicles out of there, which has not worked.
Were there ever any fines levied or any
I'm sorry, sir?
fines levied on people who were?
No,
lessees on
to my
property?
knowledge,
there
there was never any
cases?
fines. I have probably issued 15 no trespassing orders in the last 10 years to individuals, just so that if they were caught back there a second time, the police could actually do something on it. The problems with fines is that, again, the only fine that they probably could have issued legally was having an open fire, because you cannot have an open fire in the town of Harwich, even on town property.
If you were caught dumping, but again,
Dumping, we never caught anybody. The
putting
only
a
people I caught-
camera out is, it's hard to put a camera.
Right, the people that, I had cameras up
Right, I
there,
remember you had
and I
cameras.
caught people.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would have rather I had fined them. They won't dump there again,
Okay.
That's good.
but I won't go there, if
Nope.
you don't mind.
More questions, John?
No,
Jim?
Well, yeah, I've also been concerned with the ATV use, and, you know, even before this came up a few years ago, because they're also going down, crossing the Herring River, a bridge was
Yeah,
built
they had a
across
bridge there
the
for
Herring.
years.
Yeah, I brought that to Amy's attention a few years ago, so I'm concerned with all that, and we have this problem on other properties as well. Amy and I talked to the police chief a few weeks ago about telling him specific hours, specific properties where they can patrol. So hopefully we're gonna make some progress with that on all these properties. I know it's challenging.
You're not gonna get a kid on a dirt bike, it's just not gonna happen.
No, you might be able to knock down the activity a little. I mean, you know,
Okay, good luck.
I've seen trucks unloading dirt bikes in the sand pit there by the bog myself. Just, I'm not down there very often, but so I know it's happening a lot. But, so, you know, if you have a patrol, you know, run through there once a day, eventually I think you do knock down the activity, but that's another issue. Personally, I'm mainly in favor of simply letting this one continue to naturalize. I think it's, you know, most of it is essentially a forested swamp now. There's some valuable, you know, wetland vegetation. It is a wetland, the entire thing, and a lot of it has, you know, several years of growth, to the point some of it's 30 feet tall as a forested swamp. But I am with you. I'm very concerned. I think these accesses should be completely blocked as far as vehicles go, and
You know, there's so much opportunity that I was willing to do with the town, and I'm still willing to do with the town. If you decide you don't want to lease it, and you don't want this particular piece of property to be used for future agricultural use, then fine. I don't have a problem with actually working out something with the town too, though, 'cause I do live there,
yeah.
to continue somehow managing it, making sure that the roads are blocked off. Once
Yep.
again, the cops are always welcome to drive through my property anyhow, but you're not gonna get a brush vehicle down there. If one of those fires ever gets to the center of that bog, it's gone. You're gonna lose 30 acres before the town's gonna get there with fire trucks. I guarantee it. My neighbor, who lives between me and that property, is building a home. He had a 55-gallon drum that caught a very small area on fire. And within a matter of 20 minutes, they lost 3.5 acres of land up there because they couldn't get the fire trucks up there. They were actually driving down onto my beach and filling up the thing, sucking water in, and then driving up to try to put the fire out. And then we called the brush thing from Brewster to come in. My biggest concern is the fire. I live out there. These fires have got to stop. They've got to stop. Got to, hands down, have to stop.
Yeah, I agree. I know I overheard, or heard on the radio, they had a fire incident on a Nantucket conservation property, and they had they decided to put a police detail every Friday and Saturday night for a few months to try and, you know, make sure it didn't happen for a few months, and hopefully, you know.
I mean, blocking off the road will only work is if you block it off way up at Eastgate.
Exactly.
That's what I'm
Way up at
suggesting.
Eastgate.
That's
Right at the top.
All the way down Eastgate. No matter
Well-
what we have to do, if we have to put up posts every 10 feet so they can't drive between the post and the tree, but that's where it has to be blocked off. As soon as you leave that access road open that comes down to the pond,
Yeah. No,
forget
I
it.
agree, that should be,
Because
it should be closed off. It's
it doesn't work.
yeah, I mean, it could possibly be gated for daytime use or something, but it's really, you know, this is really just an extension of the Punkhorn,
Right.
which is
Actually,
a
right over from
vast,
the Punkhorn.
you know,
Yeah.
area. I mean, to me, it's a very valuable
The
asset.
only thing good about the tech school situation, and hopefully tech school students won't take this wrong, but most of them are the dirt bike guys. So you know what? If we get them to put a little labor and sweat into something and maybe have a little skin in the game, it might help us with that end of it too. But anyhow.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's a well field area, it's zoned too. I think there's a lot of reasons to just naturalize it, although I'm really adamant that it needs to be managed. And I've been bringing that up on all of our properties. And I do like the idea of some of this tech school stuff, and I think the Main Street property might be a better fit for that.
Sure,
We're
Yeah.
gonna get to that in a minute.
absolutely.
That's all I have for now. Yeah.
Jim? All right.
I'm an avid supporter of agriculture, as you all know, and the opportunity to accentuate that with an opportunity to work with a tech school, I think is a great opportunity. That's really all I've got to say about that matter at that point.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I have one other question, but
No, go ahead. I don't have much to say.
I'm just wondering, given all this conversation, if a principal issue here is discouraging detrimental use of the property, whether just allowing it to completely grow in and naturalize wouldn't be a way to make it an unattractive place for partiers, which is, I mean, if it's grown in.
The only way you're gonna
and-
do that is by blocking off the
Gotta block
roads
the
up
road.
at, what do you call it? That's why I said that.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if you block off the roads, I mean, people still can get in, and if people wanna have a party, they can walk in. Maybe that's not attractive, people don't wanna walk.
Well,
They
they're
want
not gonna walk
two
in
of
because
their
they
dirt
wanna
bikes.
bring the pallets with them. They wanna bring a
Right.
truck in with the pallets on them. They stack 15, 20 pallets high and light them on fire. I mean, this is, this is a big bonfire. These aren't small bonfires.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 110%, and I will tell you that I'm going to keep my road that I own, the access road by my house that comes in on the other side, I'm always gonna keep that open because that's how the town is gonna get out there to put a fire out.
Yeah.
But if we work together to close it off up higher, absolutely, it's okay. But we have to manage it. We have to be out there.
As long as we're not required by some sort of ancient ways, which I have to look into, as long as we're not required to keep those open, I'm completely in favor of
Well, it's
blocking
legally a
them-
town
blocking-
road, but I mean, you're not
blocking 'em
required to
off
keep it open because it's
farther
never
up.
been open for years. The only one that would argue that would want it open is me.
Yeah, well, I just wanna make sure it's not classified as some sort of an ancient way there or something that has
It's
to.
a town road.
Yeah.
It's literally a town road.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, they can be both. It can be both. I used
Yeah.
to live on a town road / ancient way, so.
yeah.
To your point, John, Thompson's Field used to be a real big party spot, and it slowly grew in, and it just, people stopped going there.
Actually, Thompson Field did not slowly grow in. Thompson's Field got built around by houses and got built around by people who complained about the party in there. I've been around a long time, man.
I have too, and it grew in a lot. I mean, it used to
It
be.
has grown in a
used to
lot,
be-
but there's also,
It used to be a
there's-
field, it used to be a farm.
Yep.
Recreated it.
Frank Thompson and I
acres
were
of-
very good friends.
I know, but I have a little experience back then to what was happened in Thompson's Field.
But there's still a fair amount of open field in there. I
There-
mean, if someone wanted to go in there with a stack of pallets,
It'd be,
or maybe drive.
They're gonna
get them
see
on
you in a
truck.
half a second.
It's
From
more-
either 39 or Old Chatham Road.
Well, it's just the use, it's just gotten, it's
Yeah,
not even the visibility, it's
so
just the use.
there's a lot of people using it.
Well, it's also the visibility too. I mean, the best place to party in Thompson Field was down behind the water department.
Right.
And I mean, that, to most people, they don't even consider that part of Thompson's Field, really. But the part that extends down into that lowlands by the water department was the best place to go partying high.
The old bike path, railroad track was a place to drive and
Yeah.
and avoid people who might tell you not to stay there.
Right.
So you just go down there and find another spot.
Right.
For this particular parcel, my comments are, I think it's really intriguing what you're suggesting with the tech school partnership. I think that's interesting. Love to see some more details. I do view this as a chance to look at this property, look at the lease information, just see what we want to do that might be an improvement. And my interests really are to see an improvement in aquatic health of Robbins Pond, the Herring River, if there's any
Thank you.
opportunity to find ways to improve those two resources through managing this property. And the third thing I'm interested in would be to find a way to have to increase responsible public access, if we can do that. It's a big parcel.
It's a tough one.
It is, but if we could find a piece of it that we could have people enjoy it as conservation land, those are the three things I'm interested in. So I suggest that we go out there at some point in the near future, discuss this further, and then I guess we'll see something from you maybe on the tech school concept
If you want me and Amy to work on it, I'll be happy to. I mean, I was just sitting here just now thinking, maybe we can incorporate this as a land management piece of property with the tech school. I mean, that's a
Right.
whole division of education.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
conservation and land management, you know?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Not just,
think,
it's a extension, I consider an extension of agriculture, but
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know,
yeah.
Yeah.
Could also be in their forestry and
Yeah, forestry.
landscape program that
Yeah.
they have there.
yeah, I like that idea as far as some restoration, and there's a huge market for, you know, hiring of people who can do this sort of restoration work and land management work. It's a growing field, so I think that's
Okay.
interesting. But
So we'll,
Sorry, I just have two other things.
we've got
One-
two more parcels to talk about.
Okay, just one question.
Only
Are
one for
there,
me.
are there herring in Robbins Pond?
No,
no.
no.
They can't make the leap from the, actually, they can't make the leap from the river to my outlet pipe. My outlet pipe is about 2.5 feet high from the, where the river usually is.
I see.
So they can't make that jump to get into the outlet pipe, number one. Then they would have to go in about 15, 20 feet and jump up about 4.5 feet to get into my bog, and then swim all the way up and jump another 4.5 feet to get into the pond. So the elevations are so drastic that, to my knowledge, in modern day history, herring have never made it into Robbins Pond.
I'm not aware of even historical records. It would
That's
have-
what I'm saying. I mean, J.J. Pino worked for me for, 30 years, and J.J., when he died, he was in his 80s, and he told me about taking ice out of Robbins Pond with horse and buggy. So, and also going down there in the summer to take fresh water out for the animals, for the livestock. And he told me he's never seen herring in there, so,
Yeah,
but again, that's to my knowledge.
but it's close to the river, and I think there could be some gains with aquatic health for both
Right.
the Herring River and Robbins Pond. So that's a goal that I would see as we look.
Quality of water in Robbins Pond is excellent. It's probably the best, cleanest pond on the Cape, and I'm proud to say that. I take water samples of it twice a year, and it's extremely good pond.
You know, I differ with you on that one because I think it's gotten quite a bit greener over the years. And I think we have ponds that are quite clear, so I wouldn't agree
Okay.
with you that it's.
I'm not really a pond
Yeah.
guy, so,
Yeah,
of the ones I live on.
it's good habitat. I think it's good habitat. I think there's some gains. It's eutrophied to some degree, and I think that there may be things that could be done to improve that.
Well, the only nutrification it's getting is from rotting and decaying trees that are falling into it.
No groundwater too, there's some groundwater coming up maybe.
Yeah, it's spring fed, it's fed from a pretty deep, I know, because I've got a number of wells on my property, so, and the quality of the water in that area. But, anyhow,
If we were to pursue cooperation with the tech school, do we have a timeframe? They run on a school year. You talked about they're trying to get a certification for agriculture as a program.
well, that's my
And,
my
but
wishes,
right now,
yes.
they have a land management program already in place.
yes.
So it seems to me that this could come under land.
They have an agricultural program, too.
They have an agricultural
Yes,
program.
but
They're just
this would
looking for a
expand it.
Yeah, they have
Okay.
landscape and forestry.
Okay. Would we be able to put this together by next September?
It would be my desire to do it before next September, yes.
Okay, that's,
Would you like to go on a more, maybe go to park at your property? It's easier to get in, as you said. And would you be willing to maybe go out next Friday? I know Brad's usually sometimes available
You have to have
Fridays.
four-wheel drive to get out there, so unless you're willing to drive,
Oh, I don't,
my
we don't
farm
mind walking
vehicles.
either.
Pardon me?
You know,
Don't
I
mind
would,
walking.
I'd like to put it off a little bit because
Okay.
I've booked a bunch of Fridays in a
That's
row.
fine.
Because this is the time I get real
All right.
busy.
I'm available anytime for any one of you, by the way. I'm home and on the farm, and as you know, I'm retired from politics now, so anytime any one of you just want to come on a one-on-one situation, please, Amy has my contacts.
Yeah,
Give her a call. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I'll probably come
morning,
out
night,
sooner rather
day,
than
doesn't
later.
matter. I'd be more than unless I have something, and I'll tell you I have something, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I can take you right out.
I'll schedule, I would like to come out and completely walk it.
Excellent.
So I'll let you guys know when I'm planning on doing that, and if anybody can come, you're welcome to.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
And I would say our next meeting is the 17th. Maybe book a Friday after that.
Okay.
Because I think as a group, I think as a complete group, we should get out there and take a look. All right, any comments from the audience on this parcel?
You guys still here?
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, Main Street is an entirely different situation. Main Street was a active cranberry bog when the town bought it. The town bought it from the Smiths. The Smiths bought it from Rodney O'Brien. Rodney O'Brien lived there for 25 years, I believe. And prior to Rodney O'Brien having it, and Rodney had a home on the site also. Effie Kroll ran it as a cranberry bog. Prior to Effie, I think it was the Crapo family, if I remember correctly. I leased it 20 years ago, just to give you a point of reference. 20 years ago, I was trying to raise a family and have a family. Now I have a 19-year-old daughter who's on her way to become a police officer. A lot has happened in 20 years. I took it over. I subsequently filed immediately and made it a organic cranberry bog. I am certified organic, and I have been for the full 20 years or 18 years that I've been leasing it from you. I keep saying 20, but I think I have 2 years left, right?
2021, you're up, so yeah, 2 more years.
Yeah, so pardon me if I run together with that. So the lease, and again, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but not only am I allowed to have a cranberry bog there, but I'm also eligible to use it for agricultural practices under the Mass General Law, I think it was 128(1)A. Subsequently, I began raising pigs, I began raising sheep, cows. We actually had, for a number of years there, a draft horse, and we had some horses there too. I incorporated the raising of the sheep and goats in with the cranberry bogs because you cannot find a good herbicide that kills weeds. So I use the goats to kill and eat the trees and the sheep to eat the grass. And it was a good plan, and it has subsequently worked over the years. Early on, I would say after the first 5 years of me being there, my sheep would get bored and take a walk down Main Street. My draft horse would get extremely bored and go over to the DPW barn and hang out with the guys over at the DPW barn. Then it was a landfill. I think we had just capped it, if I remember correctly. And he loved that grass that was on top of the capped landfill at the time. So I came in and spoke with John, and John and I came to the conclusion that it was prudent for me to fence in the property that I was using for the agricultural productions. I subsequently put a fence up. The fence encompasses about ballpark 20 acres. The whole parcel is 33. There's a 10-acre parcel in back, which has got a nice trail and walking trail through. It goes from the dump, the back of the dump, where the power lines are, and you can kind of go all the way up to basically where Main Street and Queen Anne Road come together, and then cross over the road there and go into Bell's Neck if you wanted to continue walking trails. There is a gate there. We created a parking lot out front where people could park, and there is a gate for foot access. There are no vehicles allowed other than my own on the property. That worked very well. I have a really good relationship with the neighbors there. People did not and do not, to my knowledge, come there from other parts of the town to walk around. It's basically neighborhood, people who know it. I know most of the people who walk around. I ask that they keep their dog on a leash for a number of reasons. Main one is they chase the sheep. Second, and I hate saying this on camera, but we have a hoss that does not appreciate being chased by dogs, and has been known that when a dog is aggressive towards him, he quickly gets the upper hand, and has subsequently put a couple of dogs in their place forever, unfortunately. So it's insurance reasons and management of the property, management of my animals and the livestock. It's very apparent that I need to have control over just people freely letting their dogs run around the property. They're very welcome to come and walk around on leashes, and certainly as long as they don't chase my animals, I don't have a problem with it. Again, getting into fast forwarding, I don't want to bore you with 20 years over there, but I lost an eye on the property, so I guess I'm pretty committed. I don't know if many of you know or not, but I cannot see out of my left eye, and it was because of an industrial accident I had on that property, so I have a long history there. Again, my daughter grew up there. We had a swing set where she used to play while I was out working on the bogs. And we've done a lot to promote agriculture. Myself, when I say we, I mean me and my wife, and now my daughter, to promote agriculture on that piece of property. Last couple of years, as I mentioned earlier, there's been some neglect. My health is first and foremost, most important thing to me. There have been a number of vehicles that have been parked, as all good farmers do. When they're done using a vehicle, they park them, and then they figure they're going to go back to them in their next lifetime, I guess. Not proud of it. It's what farmers do. I will let you know that I have had, I believe, at least 6 vehicles towed out of that property in the last month, and I intend on cleaning out and getting rid of a few more. So we have a metal pile going. Once again, personal note, the loss of the very dear friend of mine, Jimmy Marceline, put me in a mental state which was not good. I have subsequently gotten rid of and cut down an awful lot on the livestock that we had together, and we worked together. As I don't know if you know or not, but I also had animals on Queen Anne Road, and I also had animals on the other side of Four Corners. That's where we raised the cows. Subsequently, with Jimmy's death, we've cut way back on livestock right now. And again, as many of you know, Jimmy ran a junkyard, so he was also my inspiration, if you will, to get rid of vehicles. But I've now gone down and made a very good deal with Jack at Center Street Junkyard, and Jack is on board to help me out. So other than that, I am absolutely more than interested to continue the relationship I've had with this town for the last 20 years, if you so desire to lease the property again. I would not like to have the restriction in the future lease to be mandatory that I remain organic. I will forewarn you, you cannot grow cranberries organically. Can't be done. Don't care what anybody's going to tell you, don't care what you read. I've been doing it for 20 years. It cannot be done. It opens up the susceptibility to not only bugs, but the weed control is just, you can't keep up with it. As soon as the cranberry market turns and you start to only make 20 cents a pound, you're not going to be hiring people to go out and hand clip and hand cut and hand groom the bog. Just not going to happen. Just for a point of reference, and I think I did say this to this board, I'm not sure if all the members were here when you were talking about Bell's Neck, but in the heyday, I was getting close to $2 a pound for certified organic cranberries. This year, we broke 38 cents. So there's not money in cranberries, even organically. Investments in the property, I have put quite a bit of my own personal money into the property. I designed and built a lift pump system that I am very, very proud of. It was something that the NRCS helped me with, and they have since copied the design, and they have used it in a number of different other applications. Very quickly, just to give you an idea, it is a lift pump. It basically is a large structure, about 14 feet high, made out of aluminum. It is buried in the pond itself. The pond comes up to one side of it, has 2 chambers. One chamber lifts the water up to a level that is higher than where I want it to end up, half a mile away, if you will, on the other 10-acre side. It spills into this flume, and then by virtue of these 3-foot pipes that I've installed, it rushes by gravity and fills the bog up. And then, in strict conservation reasons, the same flume that it spills into has boards that you have to put in so that it can build up to flow down to fill the bog. But when we're done, we remove the boards and the water returns back to Flax Pond. Flax Pond has improved in its health a lot since I've been there. We used to have, when I first took over the property, we used to have these wind things out in Flax Pond that turned, and they generated air and movement in the pond itself, and they're no longer needed out there. The fact of taking water and putting water back and moving water back and forth has helped the health of the pond quite a bit. A lot of fish in Flax Pond right now. Again, I do water testing out there, and it's a pretty clean pond. That system, along with the piping and some irrigation that I put in, cost me about $70,000. Other upgrades, just maintenance stuff, basically. The roof on the barn, we did one half of it in metal, the other half is still wood. It's my intentions to replace that. The barn is where we do the animal husbandry stuff and where I have the sheep barn and the pigs barn, if you will. And other than the physical condition presently of some vehicles there that need to be removed, I am very, very proud of my maintenance and my work towards agriculture here in Harwich in the last 20 years, based from that piece of property. Had a lot of schools come through there, a lot of kids come through there. I raised my own child there, and gone out to schools. I go and have brought animals places, and again, it's all been based out of there. If any piece of property in this town that this town owns needs to remain in agricultural production, it is that piece of property. Please don't let it go. Please don't. It bothers me to no end when I drive down Queen Anne Road and I see my dear friend's property that I worked with for over 30 years, raising animals, and seeing young kids come up to the gate, and seeing people on their way to the dump, and just enjoying so much to see animals on Queen Anne Road. And to have that just abruptly stop because of the death of one individual is sad. Don't let that happen to this piece of property on Main Street. It's a perfect piece of property for agricultural production. There's enough upland for grazing for small animals. The barn is certainly repairable. I did bring water in, by the way, town water, up to the barn. Brought electricity in to the barn. I paid for that too. There's a Quonset hut there. Quonset hut is an essential piece of the operation because you need to have a place to go in and do your maintenance and you're working on things. So the Quonset hut and the use of the Quonset hut is an essential piece. I own a couple of refrigeration trucks. I don't know if any of you know or don't know. I know Mark does, but I used to raise and sell meat. We had 2 refrigeration trucks. One was roadworthy, and we used to have to go pick the meat up with it. The other one would just stay parked and would be plugged into the Quonset hut so I could store the meat there in the refrigeration trucks. Probably the biggest bone of contentions, and I'll jump right into the bad stuff, and that's the vehicles. is that black, long black vehicle that's parked there that you can see from the street. All good intentions lead to a bad road. It was my intentions to convert that vehicle into a vehicle that I could load animals in and load cages on and go do schools, parks, and things like that for educational purposes. Believe it or not, that is a front-wheel drive motorhome, and it would have been easily converted, or for me to convert into the vehicle that I had visions to do. That's not happening. That vehicle will be gone in a couple of weeks. I just need to get a tow truck to get it out of there. But that's why it was brought there. Again, I had intentions, and they just didn't come to fruition. So with that,
Thank you very much.
where do you want to go?
Well, I think we'll have some questions, and we'll start with Mark this time.
I have no questions at all.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you moving some of the vehicles, and that was a concern of mine. I know, life goes where it goes, and
All I need is a kick in the butt every now and then. And believe me, I can take it.
I
So
think
please do it.
the Conservation Commission department needs to, that was partially a lack of oversight on our part as well. But I think that's good to see all that cleaned up. My other concern was with the public access. I would certainly be open to even not allowing dogs in that fenced area, but I think it is important that the public knows that that is a town-owned property and that they have, the right to walk through there. Probably not a good idea to bring dogs in there.
But my only concern when you go down that road is a pretty well-known guy in town. And people who want to come down and talk to me and want to walk around my property, that I don't think, and really for the record too, it needs to be said, in 20 years, I don't think this town's ever got a complaint about me, from me, on that piece of property, from another town taxpayer or resident, that I refused or didn't allow them to do something. I have a really good rapport with my fellow citizens in town.
Yeah,
My problem is, and I go back to Great Swamps, as soon as we start advertising things, as soon as we start putting, this is a town-owned property, you end up getting a lot more aggravation and those, if you will, bad people that you don't necessarily really need to care right now. I mean, listen, it's your property, you guys put any signage you want up there, but I'm just telling you, beware, because it's not as advantageous. It really isn't. People will come. People, if they want to, they'll come. They'll walk down. They'll talk to me. They have. They've pulled in. They've seen me at different shows that I do here in town. I mean, I started the Meet Your Farmer here in Harwich. So.
Well, I'm not sure if everybody necessarily goes down that road. I think a lot of people just drive by and assume it's private property, and but it was purchased with taxpayer money, and it's the lease spells out that public access will be allowed. You've got it fenced in, so that controls most of the, I'm sure you don't get any dirt bikes in there or anything.
I don't get any dirt bikes in there, but I made peace with the dirt bikers by not fencing in the entire 33 acres either. I fenced in about 20 of the acres, and I left that open pathway in the back, which they use, quite frankly, more than people who walk do.
Right.
Now, I do have a lot of people that come down from Queen Anne roadside and will walk down through those paths, and there is a gate in the back in the woods, which they open and come through, and I've actually made friends with a couple of them that I know their dogs wouldn't chase my sheep and don't chase my sheep, and they certainly don't go near the horse, so they would let them off the leash. And the dogs knew me. They would come over to the shop where I'm working, and so it wasn't bad. But
that's
there is an open area. We got that 10 acres in back for trails.
I understand that, and I don't think it would be appropriate to fence that in. That's, an area that's connected to other woodlands and, for wildlife. But I do think that there should be, as per the lease
Yeah,
documents.
that's why we put the little parking space
And,
out
you know,
front.
it can be closed, you know, certainly sunset to sunrise or even other hours, and
I
then.
don't have a problem with that at all.
But I think that, one part of that is that, you know, if more people were walking down there, it might have discouraged, you know, somebody probably would have come to us 2 years ago and said, why are there, 15 unregistered vehicles on the property or whatever, so,
There's only 8, but okay.
I don't know, well, I don't know what ones were registered.
Well, a lot of
but
them are registered.
There were a lot of
I
vehicles.
do have farm plates, and some
Oh.
of them are legally registered, like the refrigeration trucks.
Right.
But anyhow,
Those are, so, and there's 2 years left on the lease, so you're gonna keep doing.
oh yeah, we'll be
What you're
cleaning up.
doing.
We'll be getting rid of all that stuff.
I
cleaning
think
up.
it,
I
you
have
know.
a roof cave in on me that my sanders are under, so I'll be repairing that relatively soon.
It does seem like possibly a good fit for a tech school
Absolutely.
partnership.
Thank you for saying that, because once again, I know I'm not gonna be here forever, and nothing would make me happier than to see myself, my family, the town, and the tech school sit down and work something out, so
And
that
that
when
may,
I'm gone, somebody's not gonna be sitting in front of you saying, gee, I remember when there used to be a big Clydesdale down there that used to walk up to the dump every day.
that may also be a way to keep cranberries there. It's, as we've all know, basically, it's kind of a loser
Absolutely.
financially. And I don't know, if I would be in favor of going non-organic on that, and I think other commissioners have similar concerns. But that's a way for labor and funding to
Well,
come in.
I think that
and
if
to-
you put any proposal out for any agricultural land, what I advise a lot of communities, and by the way, I haven't been president of the Farm Bureau for 12 years, I'm not new to being asked my opinion on leasing agricultural land. I always advise them, don't make it mandatory that it be used for organically. Make it advantageous, most advantageous. We really would like you to keep it organic, but I'll tell you right now that another 20 years of organically growing cranberries on that piece of property right there, we're gonna lose an awful lot of the cranberry vines. We just are gonna lose it. There's no money in it, so there's no way.
That's what I'm saying, with unlimited labor and actual funding, rather than trying to do it for profit, it might be a way to keep
And
cranberries.
anyone today that is gonna have, and certainly if I'm involved in this, and please know that however we go here, if you guys decide to just put this out for a lease again, or not, but if you do, I do wanna lease it for another 20 years. I have all intentions of living 20 more years and staying here in this town and running a farm. So I am very interested in staying there. Anyone to give up a certification, in cranberries right now, it would not be smart. I might be making 38 cents, but the conventional guys are making 10.
Right.
So I only gotta grow a third of what they grow and we break even. Well, we make as much as they do.
All right.
So I'll get into the weeds with you if you want on mandatory organically growing, but I would hope that you would at least keep that door open right now and look at it as being,
All right, that's all my comments for now.
Okay. John, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I guess I agree with Jim in that I'm not particularly well disposed to the idea of opening it up to non-organic growing. And I think it's our responsibility right now, or I view it, I should say my responsibility, to look for ways to avoid all the known and unknown problems associated with the chemicals that get poured on all of our agricultural land.
well, I just spent
And
the
I know
last,
this is just a tiny little microcosm here compared to the vast tracts of land in this country that get used for agriculture, but I would still greatly prefer to see it slowly deteriorate than to be pouring chemicals on it, and maybe at some point, if we have to get into the weeds with this, we have to talk about the specific chemicals and what's known and what's not known about them. But, it's the knowledge and understanding of the effects of the pesticides in particular that are used is an emerging thing. And we keep hearing new things, and problems that we thought were problems turn out not to be problems, but then there are new problems that people didn't know before. So I don't like the idea of the town sponsoring leased properties that we would even just tacitly agree that it's okay because it's otherwise not financially feasible.
So do you mind if I ask you a direct question?
Please do.
You feel that organic practices somehow are exempt or not polluting or not affecting our environment?
I know your point because you made this point before, and, right, it's not a simple thing, is really what you're
It's not as
saying.
simple. I just spent 6 hours today in pesticide training, and let me tell you something. The biggest factors that they're concerned about right now are organic products, right? Entrust is the largest used organic product for an insecticide, and it is known right now as one of the largest bee killers. So it all comes down to practice.
So, to me.
Licensed applicator. That's what you need to have on there. Educated, licensed applicator. Because Entrust is going to kill you just as fast as a conventional one's going to kill you.
So where that leads me is we should just let it all naturalize. And I agree, that's probably a piece of agricultural land that we shouldn't let go that way. And one of my questions, and again, it would lead us down another, rat hole discussion, is our cranberries, if we want to maintain an agricultural presence in the town of Harwich, on Cape Cod, in Massachusetts, are cranberries really the right crop to be advocating for? And I understand historically, and there's a lot of emotional connection to cranberry industry.
I have no emotional connection with them. I don't even like them with vodka.
Well, we've heard,
I'd like to
I'm
take a break here
anyway.
and recognize Larry. He's up at the
Oh, I'm
podium.
sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not going, because I have my position's the same. It's historic, I like that. The point I'd like to make, though, is I grew up on a farm in Iowa, so we didn't use a lot, but I'm amazed at how much things have changed. We used to spray preventive insecticides and herbicides, and now what my suggestion is, and I sent a note to you, Brad, is before we jump to the conclusion that organic's good and chemicals are bad, well, everything's chemicals. It's the source. The only thing you're talking about is the source. I would hope you'd invite in the Cranberry Research Station to talk about the integrated pest management, because we had them in a few years ago, and they've done a lot of work to get to Leo's point of only using chemicals when it's absolutely necessary, and then in only minimal ways. In the same way with fertilizers, and they've through the years they've done a lot of progress, especially now that we're on a technology boom where they monitor diseases and pests in a way that so it's really, instead of trying to protect it as a prophylactic type item, is they come in when you have a real problem and protects you from losing the crop. It's not, I think what I'm hearing, there's a misconception that I don't think he meant it this way, but people are pouring chemicals on agricultural lands. And that was your phrase, but I don't think he meant that, because for one thing, farmers can't afford to do that anymore. It's too expensive. But I would hope that maybe with Amy, I can have some, and I know Leo have a bunch of contacts, but I would like to get in and just spend the time with, what we're talking about.
So can I just respond to that just very briefly? So where I go with what you just said, and I understand what you're saying, that it's not a simple issue, but if the proposal from you, Leo, what you're suggesting is that we shouldn't require organic methods.
That's right.
But if we don't do that, if it's just that simple either or distinction, and if we leave it optional, then that opens the door for somebody to do whatever the heck they want.
Well, no,
Absolutely
what I'm saying is you get the education, but what I'm saying is you could say they have to use integrated pest management as recommended by the current research.
Right.
So it doesn't
I have
open
to
the,
file a plan.
so it doesn't open the door to anyone doing what they want. Because there's a lot of research behind that, it's very minimal use, and you can tie that in as, it's defined well enough that you could be very restrictive with that and still allow someone to use it as basically a bailout to protect the crop at the end and not get into the concerns that you're worrying about.
You know, we're getting into the weeds and stuff, and all this started with Mr. Donovan's comment about making it strictly organic. All I was saying is, that's not enough.
Yeah.
I'm guaranteeing you that's not enough. Organic products are not safe just because they're organic.
Yeah.
All right, the only lawn fertilizer right now sold in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has phosphate in it is organic lawn fertilizer. So if you want to cut down your phosphate, you tell someone they have to use an organic lawn fertilizer, what are you doing? We're putting phosphates into our drinking water. Every other conventional lawn fertilizer doesn't have phosphate in it. The key is, if we're talking about creating an RFP, all I said was, look at organic growing advantageously and demand that you have an integrated pest management program and you have a licensed applicator, because they're the ones that are going to have the mandated training, and they're the ones that are going to know about overuse of products. That's where the biggest problem, especially on this piece of property, is going to be, the overuse of products.
Let me just comment for the record that I'm a selectman, so I'm not commenting to you as a selectman because that's not legal. It's my personal opinion.
Okay,
Nothing
thanks.
to do with the selectman's role.
All right, so I guess these are really good comments, but I think we probably should save them for the point we get closer to an RFP development.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
anything further?
I just have questions, which is, you say 20 acres is fenced in? Can
Yes.
you show us what 20 acres are fenced in?
Yep. It's basically everything that's cleared.
I mean, the bog area.
Yes, all right around that edge of that tree line, goes behind this little thing here,
Yeah,
goes behind the sand pit, and it goes down this tree line here
I see.
to the water, and then comes up here and goes down the, what do you call it? I'm sorry, it goes down this way, down the tree line. This tree line doesn't belong to the property. The
Oh,
property
I
goes
see.
like that.
Okay. And then
So-
around,
And then around the front, and then through the woods, right behind this house, through the woods to the edge of the bog again and around the road.
and the 10 acres.
Is
in
all
addi-
this treed-in
is
area
north of
here.
that.
That's why I said you can come from the power lines, you can walk through, come down through here, cross over to either the Thatcher's Bog or get into,
Sand Pond, Woodland.
yeah, Sand Pond, thank you.
And where in this area have you kept livestock?
All up in this area, the barn is located up in here, there's a fenced-in separate 2 acres within that area, right up in here, that's within the 20. In other words, it's a sub-fence, where we kept like the smaller ones, because we didn't want them
Up here.
getting out. Pardon me?
Up here.
Yes.
Which is
There's the
as
barn there,
per
so
your
it's this
plan.
area right in here.
Is any of that pasture?
No, it's not pasture, it's just all, well, it's scrub stuff. That's why we have to feed them hay, and that's why I had them over at Queen Anne Road's the pasture.
I see.
And the Four Corners was the pasture.
Thank you.
This was used basically as a breeding grounds. This is where we bred the pigs. This is where they gave birth. This is where the sheep gave birth. And we bred the pigs there, and then we'd also bring them there and tag them. And we also would bring animals there, and I will still do that to quarantine them, because you can't, when you buy animals at auction, you shouldn't just bring them from the auction and run them in with your 40 herd out on the pasture. It's not good practice. So what I would do is, if I bought a half a dozen somewhere else or from some other farmer, I would bring them to this property and pretty much quarantine them. Keep an eye on them, make sure they didn't have any diseases that they picked up in the trailer or in their transport. Make sure they were healthy, 2-3 weeks, and then we'd put them off with the others.
And how many animals do you have on the property now?
Right now, there's none.
And do you anticipate that remaining
No.
that way?
I anticipate if I own my own farm anyhow, over and above this one. I probably will be getting into some more sheep this summer, and I probably will begin raising pigs again. And because I have 2 years left on this, I'll still use this property for that purpose. But then if the town decides they don't want to do anything with it, then I'll have to downsize again. It's been a practice of mine not to winter animals because it's very expensive to feed them hay, especially, 40 or 50 sheep. So the practice has been that we would bring them in this time of year, buy them up this time of year, have babies this time of year on the sheep, and then once they got big enough, I would bring them over to either the Queen Anne Road pasture or the Four Corners pasture. But since Jimmy's passed away and I no longer have access to that pasture, I have to downsize now because I don't have enough green on this 20 acres that's fenced in for them. So,
Okay, thank you.
anytime.
Carolyn?
My thoughts kind of tie into the discussion on the Great Swamp Bog also. And they're a little bit different. I like this cranberry bog because, first of all, besides the historic, it's visible. So I don't see, I'm more in favor of naturalizing a cranberry bog that's deep in the woods, that people are not aware as they pass by that, oh, there is a cranberry bog. So this is very visible from the street. If we lease out a piece of property and ask someone to create a business on it, I'm questioning whether that isn't in juxtaposition to our also saying you have to give public access. We ask somebody to come in with their business, we have to make sure they have the conditions around them to carry on that business. Now that makes the person who takes the lease the keeper of the land, and
It's been
I
a very-
appreciate your cleaning up the
You
land.
hit the nail on the head, though. It's been a very difficult aspect of being there for 20 years for me.
And if that
I
will not-
understand the access, I understand the wanting to let taxpayers, believe me, I'm a big taxpayer in this town too. But I also am the businessman that is concerned, and the liability insurance that I have to have. I mean, when my horse
Yeah. I
went
think-
after the dog, it was a scary moment, believe me, because,
I don't think we're allowed to walk all over the golf course at any time during the night. I think,
Well, even conservation areas, no matter, it's dawn to
okay.
dusk,
But
it's
even,
not.
but
yeah.
people can't have just public access to the golf course. You have to go through the right ways to get on the course. So my concern in this is, I think we need to think about how to keep these properties in condition that they're suitable for a business. That's my only thought on it.
Super.
I have applied for my organic certification, by the way. I just mailed it in for this year, so we are still certified organic for this season, for the record.
Yeah, I don't really want us to lease out property that's growing a piece of fruit that we don't want to eat.
Well, I like the opportunity of looking at both parcels, both leases at about the same time, and just having this discussion on the future. So I think it's a great opportunity.
I certainly appreciate it very, very much, Mr. Chase. I can't thank you enough. They both came at an excellent time in my life. I do want to tell the board that if you have no intentions of leasing out Main Street, I would very much appreciate notice as soon as possible. Because again, I have 20 years of my life on that piece of property. And there's a lot of stuff on there that I still have to get out, move out. I mean, we have lifts that we've installed
Yep.
that are gonna have to be removed. So it's
What I-
gonna take me a couple of years to get out of there if you decide you don't wanna lease it
What I
again.
think I'm hearing from you is that if you are prioritizing the Main Street property, to continue with farming
Absolutely.
over the other property.
Absolutely.
If you were to weigh them out.
Yes,
And so I think you're also hearing there's an interest here to, improve the health of natural resources in the vicinity and improve, I favor improving some public access to some component of these properties. It's a lot of acreage, and I'd like to see those benefits enhanced somehow to the sustainable, responsible public access. So I think it's a great chance for us to talk about it.
yeah. We did tours on that property for almost 15 years, by the way. The Cranberry Bog tour business that we do run used to be on that property.
Yeah.
We've now since moved it to Factory Road because it's just easier for us. But,
Okay.
It's been a wonderful experience for my wife and myself and my daughter, and I thank the town very, very much for giving me that opportunity, because when I moved from South Harwich, from 2 acres with 300 chickens, this was a big
Where in
big
South
move.
Harwich?
Kenwood Cabins, right on the corner of Depot Road and Route 28. So,
No kidding.
yeah. We had 5 or 6 cows there. We had a hell of a little thing going. So this enabled us to really get into it. And again, I am very proud, and I stand very proud for myself and my family of what we've done for agriculture in the town of Harwich, Cape Cod, and basically the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I've had a lot of input in agriculture across the Commonwealth, and I'm very proud of that.
Right.
And this town should be too. You guys have a great agricultural, well, you had a great agricultural commission. I hope it's still in existence.
Yeah, I think you're.
We're a dying breed, and we need to be saved. And
Right.
everything you can do to save us, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I think your management of the properties have been very different from the other properties, so I
Yeah.
think we all appreciate that, and I think it's important in the discussion. And I would like if we could sequence our evaluation of the two. I know they're not expiring at the same time, but do you think it's possible to do it that way?
It's not a problem.
Do you think we need a subcommittee, or do you think we just have sessions? Because there's gonna be a chunk of time that we need to talk about this and think about it. What's the best way to approach it? Do people have any preference on? I guess subcommittees might exclude some discussion from
That's
individual.
what I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, if you have if 2 or more members of this commission meet together, that counts as a meeting, which
Yeah.
has to get posted.
Right,
And what 2 people or 3 people or whatever feel versus the entire group, I guess I would advise against that.
okay. I think, some of us will have to roll up our sleeves to work on if we get to an RFP.
Mhm.
And so, those who are able to put the time to it, I think can put the time to it, but there's a lot.
And I think that this particular RFP needs to go out prior to the
Mhm.
end of the lease also, because if I'm not the winning bidder,
Right. Mhm.
that's another thing that I have to consider.
Right.
Again, I'm gonna need some time to
Mhm.
move my stuff out of there, and
Right.
if I'm not the winning bidder.
And I think your communication with us on the status of the Cape Cod Tech process.
I'm gonna keep that
Yeah,
negotiations open
Right.
and working, absolutely. Can I just say one more thing too for the record, and because I'm also very proud of, not only did I design and put in the lift pump, but I think to Mr. Ketchum's concerns, we also updated and improved the sprinkler system. And why that's important is because the sprinkler system is what is used to apply pesticides. And when you have a sprinkler system that is that large, 10 acres, when you flip the switch and you start turning on the sprinkler system, it's very important that every single sprinkler head come on at the same time. Because if it takes 10 minutes for the water to get from here to over there, that's 10 minutes that you're spraying clean water and washing off any pesticide or any application that you made. So I won't get into the weeds of it tonight, but I spent a lot of time and money upgrading that system, so it has about a minimal lag time. I will tell you for the record, it's not as good as my one on Factory Road. I spent $67,000 on the one on Factory Road, and I have less than 1 minute difference between the first head and the last head, and I'm real proud of that one. But Main Street is, because of its size and it's spread out so far from the point, from the POG, it takes about 6.5 minutes. So, but it's still very good with when you consider what some of these other ones are, run in between 9 and 15 minutes lag time. So,
okay. What I'm,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What I'd like to do at the April 17th meeting, when we have Stan and Paula back here, is pick a Friday soon after that to try to get everybody out there. And just so we can have that discussion as a group. I think that'd be really helpful. Any comments from the audience? Any? Okay. Jim?
Yeah, one more thing, just in relation to the Herring River bogs. I had some things, some items that are more immediate just for management. Again, like we have to manage these properties. And so I had 3 items. I was hoping we could have, near immediate action on. And one is to inspect the sluice gates, and there's possibly one board on the inflow that should be replaced, the top board. I did inspect them, they look pretty good, but that one board could be replaced, and somebody else should probably inspect them.
The sluice that takes flow from the reservoir into the
That,
bogs?
yeah, that one, the top board's a little soft, the other one actually looks fine to me, but maybe Heinz or someone, whoever.
Heinz is off, but I will go check it tomorrow.
Just tell them to call me. I'll take care of that. I'll help you guys
Well,
with that stuff.
Yeah,
Please.
we need to step,
Anything you need like that.
we need to step up, I think.
Boards I have.
Yeah.
So,
That's
so
what we have.
that's item number one. I also mentioned to Amy,
Yep.
it might be a good idea, at least on the inflow, maybe both of them, just to put a couple bolts in or a padlock, to make sure a kid or someone wouldn't just inadvertently open one during the middle of the herring run and,
Let's get a lock.
It's
It's pretty easy to
really simple.
fabricate
It's
a
just
metal hinge that'll come down.
All you gotta do is drill, if it has a new
Yeah.
Yep.
aluminum flume, you just
Yeah.
drill the flume and put a bicycle lock through it.
take 5
Okay.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Let's do
those are a
that.
couple common sense,
I will talk to
Items.
Heinz about it tomorrow.
But if you need help, Amy, call me.
I appreciate
I'll
it.
be happy.
Thank
Help
you.
me.
and then the other one is those bogs just get continuous, vehicles driving around them, several a day, maybe a dozen a day. It's something people just do at this point, is they just drive around, despite the fact there's a sign on all 4 entrances that says no
Yeah.
unauthorized vehicles. So I was hoping we could get just some split rail fence or some boulders
Yep.
or whatever, just to control that activity.
I'll talk to Highway tomorrow.
We want to
Good
keep some
idea.
access for,
Well, walking, yes.
for management purposes, the
Yeah.
town. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be some gates also, but to
Maybe-
just control it one way or the other.
If you want something sooner rather than later, the gates we'd have to order. So the something temporary, we could do something temporarily that, either potentially split rail or large stones for a temporary thing. If you wanted to go towards gates, that would be something I'd have to put a budget for.
The property is gated at night, at least during
It-
herring
it-
season
Is it?
anyway.
It wasn't done last year, and I want to talk about that when
Okay,
we finish.
well, yeah, it probably should be.
Yes, it should be.
For the herring season at the least, but most of that activity is actually just during the daytime, just people just
Yeah.
doing it. So whether, it
They shouldn't be
does
driving.
make
It's a car, they shouldn't be driving.
some sense to have gates there also.
Deterring the traffic out there, I agree with you that
Yeah.
that's a good idea, but to do anything permanent
Mhm.
in the way of
Well, maybe,
bogs or fill piles or anything of that,
I wouldn't do a fill pile,
No,
but even just,
I think it's not an
That we
issue.
can get out
It's
there.
so visible, no
a
one's
few
gonna,
posts and some gates
yeah.
are not that expensive.
Yeah.
And I think it would be advantageous to take a hard look at that. I don't see it being very expensive to do, and I think it could be done very timely.
Yeah. I just know I don't have, my budget is so tiny, I don't have it, but maybe DPW or Natural Resources might, so.
There's
I
also,
know you do,
I
but,
think on the north side, there's 3 different access points, so possibly 2 of them can be really easily dealt with a little split rail. And I think there's
Yep.
1 informal one and 2 more
Yep.
formal ones.
yep,
So a little bit of split rail will deal with most of it, and then maybe 1 gate, and the other side, probably the same thing, could have some split rail and then
Mhm.
1 gate, so we're saving money
yeah.
on that. Even just getting started with the split rail would deter people, because then you can't drive around them anymore. you
Right.
know?
Okay, so where does the money come from for that?
Well, I'll talk to the highway department to see what we have. I'll talk to you if need be, but, first thing, I gotta talk to highway or natural resources, cause that's not, my budget is only a couple $1,000s for the entire year, so. I mean, we could probably help out a little bit, but I don't have, but then July 1st is the end of the budget year, so not to. But we definitely could do something in the way, if we can't put up, a split rail we can afford, I'm sure, temporarily. Boulders, we have, for a temporary thing, that, they could be moved, and we could go towards gates.
A split rail, even temporarily, you know, you could drive a couple screws in it or something, and the rails can just be slipped out if, it's really, it's a
Right,
very
for
visible
access.
area.
Yeah.
It's simply that people think it's okay.
Yep.
It's not like anyone's gonna go in there and knock down the fence or anything.
No, we
It's,
don't really get a lot of vandalism in
hopefully,
there. We don't,
but,
it's not so much that as it just is, it's
It's
commonplace.
very highly visible area, it's just that people just drive around
Yep.
it constantly.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I've been
I will
going there
talk
quite
to
a bit.
Highway tomorrow.
Early, sometimes on the way to work, I'll go there to check the fish run, and the gate's been open for at least 1 or 2 seasons, and I think Heinz is feeling that he's got early morning walkers, so he's been leaving it open. And what we're picking up is detection of more poaching activity.
Yeah.
And last Friday, my technicians had a guy approach him, offering to sell them roe, saying that he gets as much as you want, anytime you want. It's a great place for me to get roe. The guy was a knucklehead because it was a state truck they were in. And yet he still offered to sell them roe. I would have loved to have the chance to talk to him and see what I could set up in terms of a purchase. You know, to catch him. But either way, I think we should just decide to start locking it during the herring season because
Yeah, and then Ron, who lives right there, he's always been really great about
you can open it.
opening and closing, because he lives right there, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I thought he used to close it or something.
He did.
Just a year or two, this has been going on, so I think we just,
Well, and he doesn't want people, and he lives right there, he doesn't want people in there either.
I think that's something that should be immediately addressed, as, I don't know if we have, who would be in charge of locking it at night?
I'd have to chat with Heinz and see how he used to do it.
yeah.
I mean, maybe police, because there's, I mean,
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
I think Ron is very willing to help out. I talked to Ron last year about it, but there might be some times where he's not there, so then you'd need a second.
yeah, I mean, maybe if a couple people could volunteer, and I have no problem, not every day probably, but going by there on
Yeah.
some evenings and locking it after dusk, I don't have a problem with that, but maybe if a few people wanted to help out with it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because it has been a problem area for poaching.
yep.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
'Cause we're on this bog. Is there a physical pump still on the property?
Yes,
There is? Is it V8?
Chrysler.
It'd be my suggestion that you would look at and maybe talk to someone about taking that propane-fired motor out. And again, if you're gonna hopefully be releasing the Main Street bog, maybe it can be stored over there in the event that, I have a 6-cylinder motor in there that's fairly new, but if it ever needs backup, it's just a shame to see if a pump is sitting there in a building, it might behoove the town to move it out, and I know Link doesn't want to store it over his place, so I'd be happy to store it for the town.
Have we
And then
given,
just leave it at Main Street.
Craig didn't
and-
take it.
we
with
didn't,
him.
was Craig given an option to pick it up if he wanted?
Oh, maybe he took it, I don't know.
Oh, I don't think he's taken it.
It's still there?
I just don't know if he has
He
any.
had told me, and I will happily call him again, I don't wanna take something from him that he still
Yeah.
wants, but when he left, he said he had everything that he wanted out of there. But I will check that, because if it is his, I'll double
Absolutely. I
check,
think you
but,
need to verify the ownership.
Yeah. How about
Yeah.
sprinkler heads? Was the sprinkler heads there?
There are none there.
no, I didn't, no,
There's a couple maybe, yeah.
but,
You know what I'd like to suggest is that the next meeting, we also pick a date where everybody can go to that bog as well, everyone that wants to go to these different sites and just look at things, because we really need to step up our planning for what to do there. And I think it's a good time to do it, say, late April, when things are starting to grow. So let's do that next meeting.
and I will, I need to be better about asking people for help, too. So maybe, we do have a trails committee, but maybe if we can have a couple people who are willing to help with certain areas.
Yeah.
Coordinate things, et cetera, that would be really helpful for us, because it's not for lack of wanting, it's
Right.
just,
We'll come up with a list. I'm going there every Sunday now to check the electronic herring counter, so I'll be there every Sunday for, almost 2 months. So I'll be happy to do.
I have something for you, I'll talk to you later about it.
Good.
Why would we not want to engage DPW to mow the shore ditches and mow the perimeter of the bogs?
That was actually on my list. It's been mowed, it was mowed last year, and it wasn't clear whether it was a town authorized mowing or if it was a neighbor mowing it.
I don't believe it was the town. I had a conversation with the town about it.
Right, yeah.
And I've had conversations with the neighbor. And then, so when you folks said we're not putting this back out for a bid right now, then that was my indication that for now, you're letting things go and that we should not be continuing to be mowing
I think
those
it
paths.
may-
That's what I took out of it.
I think it may be appropriate, nice to mow like a 6-foot path
In the
around
middle?
the perimeter.
Oh, okay.
A 6-foot walking, 6-foot wide
In the-
walking
in the
path
road.
around the perimeter.
I think we get a list of questions and issues, meet on site and dig into these. I
I mean,
think,
we typically mow, like some of our other conservation areas that we mow only a couple of times a year or, that way people can still walk and it keeps you from getting ticks and everything else like
Yeah.
that. But I just wasn't sure, so I haven't asked Highway to mow at all.
yeah, I think that's the answer, Mark. It hasn't been addressed.
Well,
Yeah, that's,
I am very much in favor of having it addressed, and I think it's something we should push towards, and I would advocate to have the shore ditches mowed as well. They do have adequate equipment to do that, and it can be done pretty easily and very inexpensively since they already have everything.
All right, well, let's pick a date on the 17th and get a
I
bullet
wrote that
list
down, that we'll do that.
of items that we want to resolve. It's really, it's up to us, I think, to get proactive with managing
Absolutely.
that site. We can't just let it, we talk about naturalizing it and maybe letting it go, or we have to manage it,
Right.
so. All right, what's next on the agenda?
We do have, before we
Thanks,
jump
Al.
in,
No?
sorry?
Am I done?
I think so, thank you very much.
No, thank you guys very, very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I apologize for my being tired, and
No,
it's been a long day for me, so.
we learn a lot, so appreciate it.
Rest.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night.
Before we go into some of our other paperwork stuff, we do have Mike Lewis here for 236 South Street. It's a discussion item. So Mike is the property manager, essentially, of the Aaron's, Rebecca and Tom Aaronsfeld's farm at 236 South Street, which is almost across from the elementary school there. It's been in front of you a couple of times. Actually had a very productive, really good conversation, I think, with Becca after our site visit today, so hopefully that went well. Just real briefly, if you don't mind, and then I'll shut up. So Mike came in at the last meeting, very informally, mentioned he'd wanted, the Aaronsfelds wanted to install a fence along, between their property line and the neighbor to like the southwest, if you will, in order to keep the animals that are on the Aaronsfelds property on their property and the animals who are on the other property on their property. There's a wetland, there's numerous wetlands kind of snaking around the property, but in this particular area, had wanted to potentially put fence up to the 25-foot buffer, if you will, which would be if you were considered land and agricultural use, that would be your, that would be as close as you could go. So, some of us went out to the property today, and Mike was nice enough to show us around. And and I had sent you in your, and it's on your Dropbox too. I didn't print it out because it's 128 pages long. But with appendices, I do have a copy. I made a copy for the office of the Farming and Wetland Resource Areas Guide to Agriculture in Massachusetts. It was put together not only by conservation-related people, but by farmers and people in the agriculture business. It's a really good guidance document. So, at any rate, I gave you that. So it's, you courses of action would be really to, with this particular activity of building the fence, it's whether or not you think it's maintenance or improvement of land and agricultural use to build this fence, and whether you would deem it as such, or whether they would apply as a regular homeowner would to put a fence up and then thus have to abide by the regulations that most homeowners would have to abide by being near wetlands. I gave you my read of it, and I will leave it. And go ahead if you like, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mike.
No, no worries. So we're looking to put up a fence between the two properties, as most of you guys saw. After you guys left, I did speak to some people at the Farm Bureau. Brad Mitchell, I think he's the head of the thing. He recommended T-post fencing. If we were to put anything in, there's a lot less disturbance to the ground with that stuff.
Can you explain that, what it is?
It's just a metal bar, and it kind of has two little things that come off of it. So you just push it into the ground rather than digging a hole to put a post in. It's a lot less invasive. And then what you guys saw, the whole area is cleared, so it's not like we would be disturbing any shrubs, brush, trees, anything like that. It was talked about with Amy and Becca when she talked to Becca this afternoon, that when we do get to that line, we're going to follow the 25-foot back up the hill and down a little bit farther. I think it was you that was concerned about the dogs just going around it. And I said we could plant some shrubs there, which we probably still will, but we'll end up coming up and over so that it does complete the line.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments? Carol?
I'm not sure what the question in front of us right now is, whether or not this is actually land in agricultural use. Is that our question?
No, because part of their property, and they don't have a farm plan yet. I know you're working towards that.
Yeah, we have that for 4 years.
So parts of their land may be, because you're producing a commodity for sale.
Mm-hmm.
But other parts of the property may not be. And it doesn't go by property line.
Yeah.
So it's whether or not the work proposed is an exempt activity under the Wetlands Protection Act. So whether the construction of this fence, where they're proposing to do it, is an exempt activity.
And the only
But
other,
without an official diagram from you, I'm not sure where this fence is going to go, even though I was there this afternoon. We saw the 25-foot line, but now you're talking about wrapping it around, or?
that was briefly mentioned this afternoon when Amy talked to Becca, after you had brought up the concern about the dogs just going around it, or the animals going around it. We still only plan on doing that one stretch right now. That wasn't really in the plans. We haven't had time to set it up.
But to go back to the question at hand, though, really we're trying to determine whether it's exempt.
Whether the work is exempt, or
And
should he file for
Right,
it.
I think without a plan, without an approved farm plan, I don't think we can say it exempt. That's my first thought.
So the only other reason too, nothing's been touched back there is so we don't have to touch anything back there. Preserve the woods the way it is, except for a couple of trails.
Mhm.
I mean, if you wanted us to go back there and bulldoze, what is it, 3 acres I think are back there, make it into, a turnout or put pigs and cows back there, it would be a waste of woods and habitat and everything else.
Are you threatening us?
No. I was
If you
just,
don't
I'm
approve my
just,
fence, we're going to
I'm
bring in
explaining the
pigs.
reasoning for why it's still woods back there.
Mhm.
Is
So-
there any harm to having an RDA submitted? And we
Well,
would-
that's where I was gonna go with it, is submit a request for determination of applicability. Sometimes if it's very clear cut whether it is or isn't, you don't need to file.
Mhm.
But you file a request for determination. I'm happy to give you the paperwork and help you with it.
Mhm.
I would say tonight, we don't have enough evidence to say that it should be exempt. That's my first thought. But an RDA is a pretty low lift in terms of effort and cost.
Mhm.
You already have a plan, so you have a plan with the wetlands on it, so that's the hard part, the hard and expensive part.
Yeah, I would say I went through that document extensively that Amy shared with us, and, it was interesting. I pulled out a few quotes from that, so. The exemption applies to normal activities that occur on land currently in agricultural use and does not include activities that would bring new land into agricultural use. An exempt improvement is an improvement that is necessary and directly related to the production of raising agricultural commodities. So you'd have to prove that the fence is directly related to producing agricultural commodities. The definition of land and agricultural use is presently and primarily in production, having profit as the chief aim of the operation. And another interesting quote way deep in there, a change in use from forest to open land for farming. Let's see, change in use from forest to open land for farming and forest used only for recreation or scenic amenity do not qualify as agriculturally used land. Therefore, activities are subject to wetlands protection regulations. That's quoted from that Massachusetts farming document. So I don't personally see any way that that particular activity could be exempt unless you could really prove that that area was actively farmed in the last 5 years.
At one point, there was a chicken coop back there.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
It was on our property. We did feed them, did take care of them. We did collect the eggs and sell them.
It would
That's
have to,
agricultural use right there.
it would have to be,
It was only a small area,
right,
but it was still used
yeah.
in that area. I don't know how small you have to break out these things to say that the land is being used.
Yeah,
But I think protecting property and everything else is also part of it.
What's that?
Protecting property and people that are walking back there with their horses and goats and stuff like that, and the kids is also a big part of it.
Right. I think an interesting way of looking at that would be as a living fence of, shrubbery and trees, and possibly even a temporary fence while the planting's established might be a way to get around this issue.
We're fine with that, putting in a living
But
fence.
I don't personally see it as exempt after an extensive read of those regulations.
Okay. Any other comments, Mark, or? I think we're advising you to do an RDA, and I haven't heard of much that would really exclude that from being
What you could-
successful.
Right, so for for the extent that you wanna go within 25 feet, that will be up for debate at the commission's meeting. What I would suggest is I can work with you, and you come up with kind of 2 scenarios. You come up with the one up to the 25 foot, and we propose that, but also have a second scenario, which would be in compliance with, if you were not found to be exempt, if this, then you have you don't have to like go back to the drawing board, you already have something created that could work, potentially.
So if we wanted to completely get rid of the fence idea and do a living, like he said, what do we have to do then? Same thing, still the RDA?
If
Or
you're
do we
using
just-
if you're using native plants, I can, I could take a look at it with a plan with you, what you wanna do and what you wanna use. But that might even be something we could be done administratively if the commission feels like that is okay.
How would a living fence keep out a dog?
Well, it's either we have a regular fence or a living fence, and it seems like at least he would and she would rather have something living.
But your purpose is to keep out your animals in and
Well, after
their
the living
animals
fence
out.
went in, we could put in the chain link outside of the buffer zone, or another style of fence.
Right. Okay, well, I'd say work with Amy and.
Decide what you wanna do, and I can guide you as to what path,
What would we have to do to get to the 50-foot buffer with the fence?
an RDA.
If we go, okay, so we'll probably do that at the same time. That at least puts us 50 feet away. If we go 100, we're back to the trail that we were walking on today, which is just very far away.
Kinda counterproductive. for
Yeah.
everyone, so. Give me a call and, we can put something together.
Cool.
All right, thank you
All right,
for waiting.
sounds
Thanks, Mike,
Yep.
appreciate it.
All right, what do you want to tackle next, Amy?
Let's go back in order then. So let's go to, we still don't have the thing from Heritage about Red River. By the way, we have courting piping plovers there currently. So if you're interested in seeing their dance,
On Red River Beach, not,
Yeah, I probably shouldn't advertise it so much, actually, that was a no-no. But we have plovers in a couple parts of town. We put up the fencing last week, so.
Okay, so we can't act on that yet.
Nope, so you can,
Alright.
the certificate of compliance for the Dax property, which, at 18 Harbor Way, it's across from, the old fish house on the river there. So it's a septic upgrade, but Nikki and I both looked at it. The septic is fine, but when they restored the access, so they ended up not going up the hillside on the side of the property, and they ended up using the driveway, which we said they could. However, they really made it very much more formal, less native than it was. So they expanded the driveway, added mulch, not replaced any vegetation, and removed vegetation on the opposite side of the driveway, and changed or replaced the front steps. So this is within the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone and all in the flood zone. So the driveway is now stone instead of pavement, which is good. But we would, at this time, and Nikki and I can work with them on what type of plantings, but we would recommend in the mulched areas that if it's really thick mulch, that it be removed. But if it's a thin layer, just plant in it and not mulch again. But we would recommend holding off on the certificate of compliance until at least late fall. So we can instruct them to put plants in this spring, and the plants can go through 2 growing seasons before you issue the certificate of compliance.
What was their explanation for all that activity in the no disturb zone?
Well, it was a driveway and there was a walkway to their home, but the stuff on the side, it's much more landscaped now than it was. I mean, after going through the conservation hearings for their property, as well as going through it regarding the other property, across the access there, they should have known.
Yeah, I'm not too happy about this. That's a
No,
lot.
it could,
that's
and
a
we're
lot
gonna
of-
revisit it again, it could be a violation.
Yeah, it's a lot of activity. The widening of the driveway.
I have to go actually measure it, but yeah.
Is when I'm looking at the paper, on the photo to the left, is that a different property or the same property? Because it appears,
That's the Belmont, there's almost looks like a fence.
yeah, I see the fence.
That's the Belmont.
Yeah,
So the
I ca-
town, yeah,
it kind of looks like everything to the left of 18 Harbor Way, the building was basically kind of natural meadow-like or something.
yeah,
And now it looks like it's lawn.
yeah. I'll have to check, no, that's not,
Even right up to the house, when you look at the older one,
yeah,
it's a little bit hard to see, but it kind of appears to be a
yeah.
shrubs and
There were, what happened back then was
grasses.
the access, the approved access for getting, their septic system is back here. If you could see where the test hole
Okay.
was. So they were supposed to go, this is kind of a hill right here. They were supposed to go up and around the house this way. Even the commission at the time said, this was at the time because they were appealing their neighbor across the way, the fish house, they were the ones appealing our
Oh, yeah.
decision there. So the reason they decided to go around the backside is because technically their driveway is on his property. And they didn't want to deal with that. So we had said, go through the driveway, but we also, we said, it was supposed to be restored to what it was, if they were able to do that. But that would have, it should have been the less disturbed way of doing it, but this is not what we,
That's a lot of activity.
what we approved.
Yeah, no, that wasn't the plan, so
So we can, I can address that with them, and you can certainly have them in here, if you'd like. But I
Have
can't
you-
recommend the certificate of compliance right
Yeah,
now?
No. I just don't know how far this should go. I mean, have you had a discussion on
I think we gotta,
returning the conditions? Is that an option to, reduce the
Well, I
size of
mean,
the driveway?
I So I think I have to pull their site plan, hold on, I got it right here. Let me show you exactly how far that driveway is from the wetland. It's actually on the coastal bank itself by
Yeah,
definition.
it has to be, so. You know, this shaving of the resource area like this, it's
Yep.
really kind of disturbing. It's common, and it's, we shouldn't be,
Well, if you feel like it's necessary, I'm happy to find them. As
I-
well as have them.
is there a period at which we can no longer find, or?
It's 15, technically it's 15 days from the date of notice, which we only saw this on, Monday, we visited it,
Yeah.
so.
How do people feel? Would you rather have Amy have a discussion on restoring conditions or find them initially?
Well, just to clarify, did they have a permit to expand the driveway or to do
No,
something?
not to expand the driveway, they were allowed to use, we preferred that they use the existing driveway to access the
Supposed to
septic system,
Return to the way
but they
it
didn't
was.
say anything.
A lot of spruce.
It's almost doubled in size. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it might
Do
be
we know if
appropriate.
they
to-
use the existing driveway? Do we know where they approached the new septic system?
Yeah, from the driveway.
They did approach it,
Mhm.
which was our request.
Yeah, but we didn't allow them to expand
We
it, or.
didn't allow them to expand it, I understand
Yeah.
that. But is it possible that those trucks accessing that area ruin the paved driveway?
Yeah,
That they would have to redo the driveway anyway, and we gave them permission to use the
but
driveway.
not expand it.
But not expand it.
And not where there was native planting, or not where they were planting, create mulch beds.
Right, I think the
Yeah.
mulch beds need to go. I think the two paths are to either have Amy talk to them and see their interest in restoring what was there, or just issue a fine and then have you discuss.
Well, as much as you can discuss, are our lawsuits totally finished with them, or no? I mean, they're the ones that.
Yeah, I think well, they didn't choose, there was two.
It's only, I think it's only Brad and myself that are being sued,
We can't,
and Amy.
yeah, it's two different properties.
It's two different
it's two
properties, I
different
understand
things,
that,
so
but just in
I think that's, yes, because.
figuring out how to deal with personalities, and you're really good at that.
I mean, I have a I know them, I can talk to them. We just haven't yet, because we just saw
Yeah.
this Monday. So, I think there were two suits. One of them they gave up on, and I think the other one they settled or gave up on. I don't think we have any active suits with them right now.
I think you're right.
Because Fran Zaretti, the owner across the street of the fish house, has even come in and said he plans on coming back into us because he wants to complete the original plan of what he had there. And he said, well, I can do that now because the appeal is gone.
Does anyone have a preference on what we do here, or object to a fine, or any thoughts on that? It's a nominal fine. I just, this tweaking of the 0 to 50
Mhm.
in unauthorized ways is disturbing to
I
me.
think for the driveway, it should be done.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
We're going on your statement, though, as to what it looks like, because all we have is a picture. I
Well,
haven't
right.
seen it.
Yeah.
Anybody else
I
has
mean, this
seen it?
was taken, we showed you before and after. That was the
Yeah.
intent of
Right.
this.
I
Yeah.
can recall the hearing. There was no proposal to alter the driveway.
No, I remember
No,
the hearing, too.
They
now,
were
but-
supposed to go up the
yeah.
backside of the
Mhm.
house.
Yeah.
But then we had said, we had asked the question, well, you should go through the driveway, but we didn't say,
Yeah,
make it bigger.
Looks solidly double the size.
Yes, yeah.
you know?
Well, I'm gonna motion that we find the activity at 0 to 50, $300, and then recommend that Amy have a discussion whether we can get physical restoration that, would cause us to, keep the fine or not.
Yeah, we can always issue it, and then you can decide later whether to
Right.
rescind it or not.
If there's some nice restoration, then that's better than cash, but either way, our motion that we fine $300 for the activity in the 0 to 50. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second?
Question, comment, if you don't mind?
Sure.
I would also include in that not to issue the certificate of compliance at this time, but to revisit it in the fall.
Okay, so,
But well, and this, just for discussion, this would, in issuing the fine, we would essentially require restoration.
Not necessarily, you can just fine and not do anything, but yes,
I
usually
don't
we
think-
do.
I don't think that's appropriate. I think it should certainly be restored.
I agree.
okay, well, I'll amend the motion to, have a $300 fine for the offenses in the 0 to 50 with restoration of those habitats that were altered. And what was the other point?
Not issue the certificate of
Right,
compliance at this time.
And wait to issue the certificate of compliance this time. So we have a second for that,
A second.
okay?
That's a little vague, don't you think? And as I said, I'm just hesitant that if we don't have our ducks in order, it'll just be a molestum.
It is a little vague, but I'm confident Amy's gonna go back to the file, see exactly what was written in the order,
Yeah, I have it
and
right
then approach them and say, here, there's a fine on the table,
here. You
and
gotta put it back to what it was,
let's talk
other
about
than
restoration.
for footprint, yeah.
And then they have to come and talk to us about what they're doing to restore, right?
Yeah, they could, right,
Or at least they have to talk to Amy about it, so.
right. We can make decisions at that point as to what we do.
You also, I mean, you're holding the certificate of compliance up, so that's,
Right,
it's gonna force them to do some stuff,
Okay.
probably.
all right, so, all those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
As
Okay.
as a matter of process in the future, should I have a motion to rescind the first motion, or I can just?
No, once you because once they're seconded, you're okay.
Okay. All right.
You just added on to it, you didn't really.
Mm-hmm.
So on May 19th, from noon to just around 1, some people would like to have a very small wedding ceremony at the pedestrian bridge at the Bell's Neck. I mean, there's plenty of parking for 4 cars down there. It's 17 people, 4 cars. They're gonna have, just while they're there, 2 seats for people who can't stand for very long. It is technically your land, so they need your blessing to do it. I'd recommend letting them do it.
I've read the letter, it sounds really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I would move we grant permission.
Okay, I think we have a motion, seconded by John. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
I think that's fun.
More weddings, the better. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when people approach us all the time, like, can I have a ceremony on the beach or something like that? And it's like 200 people in a tent, and then, but this was nice. It was-
Yeah, no, I think
Very-
that's a great location. Obviously, the place is special to them,
Absolutely.
so.
So, would you like to tell us, so this is, Brad won't be voting on this, but typically we have a sonar counter for herring, and we'd like to move it, Division of Marine Fisheries would like to move it up closer to the Hinckley ladder rather than the, West Reservoir.
Yep.
And just thought you should approve it, or
Yeah.
come to you for approval.
I'll give you 1 minute of extra information. It's a PhD graduate student at the University of Massachusetts in New Bedford, and he's asked to partner with us to look at getting more information on the counts of herring, comparing, it's called the Didson sonar. It's a very expensive, high-tech, high-quality sonar, and it can be used to compare to the volunteer visual count and electronic count to try to, figure out how accurate these different counts are. So it's a device that's hooked up to a couple batteries alongside the stream. It sits on a tripod, and it goes in the water, then sends a beam across. So there's no other structure than that. It is jurisdictional, but nothing is in the water that could impede any aquatic life. And so I think it's a good idea. We'll get some good information out of it. So I will not be voting, but any questions?
So it says in his proposal that there have been no observed disruptions due to the 1.8 megahertz.
Mhm.
It is, it's sound, it's a 1.8 megahertz, whatever,
The frequency, yeah, it's.
but it's sound, it's not.
Yes, it's a very low frequency.
And
It's-
low, that's high, right? 1.8 megahertz?
I don't think it is. Anyways, it's a technology that's been used for a long time,
I see.
for a lot of different purposes. And what they see with, I mean, you see what the fish are doing, you can identify the species, the size, and you see no reaction to the fish, to the beam.
Okay.
And so it's pretty benign. They just go right past it. So I think the issue for us is the fact there's a little bit of apparatus that's in the on the bank in 0 to 50. And then the activity of him coming to change out batteries. We allowed it for the West Reservoir last year, I think, yeah.
Yep.
And then he did it down the Mattapoisett River, and I partnered with him on that project as well. And so I think it's a good thing. It's a temporary, activity, and it comes and goes.
We were talking about putting a lock on boards on a herring run. What is the chance of this being?
He absolutely must lock it. He can't, I mean, it's expensive.
That's what I'm wondering.
And so it has to be locked. He also puts a corkscrew into the ground, I should have described this, that kind of locks the box in. And so you really would have to, it would take a lot of effort to lift it all up. And so that screws into the ground, and he absolutely has to lock it.
This would kind of, just for the commission's edification, this would kind of fit into an exemption for being an exploratory type use, if you will.
Yep.
Scientific exploratory use, temporary. It'd be interesting because this is where our citizen scientist herring counters come.
Yep.
To this location for 10 minutes every hour of the daytime during herring season. So, I mean, basically, we take that snapshot in time and we extrapolate the data out for what it would be for the season, but it'd be kind of interesting to see just how close we really are.
Be very interesting, and the idea is we think we're seeing more and more night movements.
Yes.
And so the volunteer visual count doesn't pick that up. So, to me, it's like a tuning exercise to the other technologies. So it's going to be a publishable exercise, which is good. It'll be out in the open, the public, and don't see a lot of downsides. The human activity in that area, but it's not very long lasting.
They're already there because the counters are there too.
Right.
And
Yep.
it's in a neighborhood situation. You have people going down.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So
Is that counter down at the West Reservoir a different one this year then?
Same one. It's electronic counter that my agency purchased and manages.
Is it different technology than this though?
Yeah, that's a real crude electronic counter. Fish go through a tube with a field in it.
Yeah.
Triggers one. And it could be one bluegill, it could be one herring. It's
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
is, gets a one.
Yeah.
And where this is going to show you images of what the species are. So we'll gain information also on multi-species, eel, all those other type of fish that we don't think about
everyone
much.
thinks all the perch that sit there are herring.
Yeah. So
All
That's
right.
to
great.
me,
Right in the
much less intrusive
flow.
than
The
an
eddy,
electronic counter.
on the sides of the run down there.
So should I make a motion to approve the installation of a sonar counting at Hinkley Pond Flume?
If you wish.
Sounds good.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Extension.
All right,
Thank you.
an extension.
Interesting. Can we
Yeah.
see the pictures?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be images that they show, and it's, we could have do a presentation down the road, or maybe I could give a presentation on the topic, because I am working with him. But I certainly can't afford this instrument.
Of course, I don't have the cheat, oh, no, I didn't. It's up to you if you, you have a fairly light agenda next time too. So do you want to do the procedural cheat sheet now? I had a couple of minor edits.
Yeah, I think it's up to the folks here, whether they've been able to really read it carefully, because I've done that edit a while ago, so
Yeah, it was a while ago.
I'm pretty comfortable, but if you guys have had the time to look at it, otherwise we can do it next time. It's up to you.
I have not looked at it.
Ernie did a good job with this, but you might think of a whole nother bullet to add.
Yeah, I have a couple other thoughts too.
Yeah.
I just haven't had a chance to add.
Okay, well, let's put it off, but try to nail it on the 17th.
One thing, if you permit me for just one thing, on his number 7 here, I added, just because this kind of came up today when we were on site at a property, you know, so number 7, it really talks, we go to the site visits, you can go on yourself. So something you should know is as part of applying or being on the agenda for the Conservation Commission, I mean, people are on the agenda because they know they're going to be on the agenda. They've asked for it or agreed to it or something. The owners, by doing that, they're giving you the right to enter their property. Now, for even for other properties, say you just happen to be walking around, I mean, and you can't just be like, oh, there's a wetland, I'm going to go inspect these people. You have to have a rational reason to go on other properties. But if, you're going by and you're like, oh, this person lives in a dune, I'm going to go see, you can't do that. But once they apply to, or are on an agenda, meaning we've had a conversation that they're going to be on an agenda, you have every right to go on their property. We try not to push that, and we try to be respectful of that. But it's hard for the commission to make a decision if you can't get on the property.
Right.
So,
That's my comment there, that I knock on doors.
yeah, always,
That's always, want to say hi and then,
who you are.
but many times, given the community that we have, people aren't there.
Yeah.
And so,
You're gonna see, I mean, now that summer's coming, or spring's coming, more and more people are coming back, so. Takes us a little bit longer on site visits sometimes when people come back
Yeah.
into town. We can put it on for the 17th.
okay.
Before we do the minutes, so 9 Fiddler's Landing, if you recall, they're on the east side of Allen Harbor there. This was the one where the deck changed footprints a few times, we had some plantings. So they have a plan an approved plan that just says hedge on it as part of their landscaped area, not part of their native planting area. Of course, I left it in my office. So we didn't specify what hedge was to be made out of. They had asked me if they could do privet, and I said no. Privet is not a state-listed invasive yet, as far as I know, but it's probably will be. That's what people like to use for hedges. So I had instructed them to really look at some native plantings that could be used as a living fence. They didn't love any of the ones I suggested. So they found this non-invasive, supposedly privet, the one that has been engineered to not be invasive, called Vickery Golden Privet. And they would like to use it, and they'd like to know if you'd be okay with it.
Is
It would
this for the-
essentially be an ornamental.
Is this for the area to the left of the house? As we're facing the house, it's to the left and it's by the
It's actually to
gate
the left and the right. It's
and the right, but,
goes from the road paralleling their house and then into their house, and the backyard is the natural area that we require.
it'll go from the road
In.
in. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do recall a conversation on privet, because one of my neighbors.
Yeah, I don't know if it was for this property, they just said hedge,
It
and I think we,
was,
but,
I do remember that.
I had
'cause
told them no privet. So, because privet is invasive, how you feel, this doesn't even need to be specific to this property, it comes up a lot, privet.
Was this in the 50 to 100 or 0 to 50?
Mostly in the 50 to 100, there is a corner of it that's in the 0 to 50.
This was a existing property that had modifications? or-
Yeah, they had, so it's, off of Wawatasi, you take a right on a Fiddler's Landing, and it overlooks Allen Harbor.
This is
It's
the one that had a deck, and they wanted to
They
take
had
out
a
the deck,
deck
and
and
they
put
put in a
a
patio.
patio, yes.
And when McPhee was doing the construction.
It was also the one that they wanted, their dock, they wanted to have a roof over the
yeah.
landing part of the
Oh,
dock.
yeah,
That's how I remember it.
remember going out there.
And we had said, no, you could have a pergola, I think we
Huh.
had
Oh, it's
settled
that
on.
property.
Yeah.
So,
No,
so
then-
it's part of the kind of ornamental landscaped area, but part of it is in the 0 to 50, and I think that they could use some native plants per,
Did you give them red cedars and inkberry and
Yep.
stuff like that?
yep.
So I
Well,
looked up,
even arrowwood viburnums you can use those as a hedge. I had said, winterberry holly shrub could be used as a hedge. 'Cause they have irrigation, they're not allowed to expand it, but they already have irrigation there. So,
does Winterberry holly get that big?
can,
Inkberry can be actually managed as a hedge.
Yep.
And it's evergreen. Right?
Yep.
So, I kind of think they have a lot of options, and the idea of this stuff is to balance these,
right.
improvements to the properties with some benefits to the ecosystem.
I think this is, well, it's not invasive, but it's not native.
Yeah, it's more of an ornamental, this varietal of it. I've started to see it, this isn't the first time I've been asked about privet. It's like your traditional hedge. But I think we do have other options that can be
Yeah, something that's actually a benefit to the whole
hedge-like. At least
system.
that's native, not just ornamental. That's fine, I just thought I would ask. I figured it might come up again anyway some other time. Does everybody just prefer to stick with the natives?
Privet has not been labeled invasive.
I thought,
I'd have to check.
I looked up, I was looking into this afternoon or this morning or something, and there's one variety of privet which I believe is state listed. There's several
Might be.
other varieties of privet which the state has not taken a position on.
You can
This-
still buy it, I've
the-
seen it.
The
It's,
Vickery Golden privet is not on the state's list at all.
yeah,
But I did find someone commenting about the invasive nature of privet, and
Right.
basically what they were saying was all privets are invasive, and it's seeds and suckering. But this particular person claimed that the Vickery privet actually recently bred in North Carolina.
yes,
It's sterile, it doesn't have seeds, so that half of the
invasive
spreading,
nature of it, yeah.
yeah, is not there.
Yeah, it was
I
the
don't-
first I had heard of it, so.
So the question is, can we require only native plantings in the 50 to 100?
No, I mean, we've allowed ornamentals for some or for some, like, foundation plantings
Yeah.
around houses
Yeah.
before, like lilies and, it's up to you. I mean, if we change, I don't really consider this a foundation planting.
I can't picture exactly where it is.
Sorry,
But if it was a
How- what-
foundation planting, then that's.
It's not a
You
foundation.
sent,
Not a
Yeah.
foundation.
You
but
sent
It's
a-
along the
still.
property lines.
We
Right.
approved we
A hedge, we
approved
approved a hedge.
how long is the hedge?
Goes from the road at least 50 feet in.
Well, there's this photo of the plan
Yeah,
that's on the,
and on the plan that should show hedge on there.
Probably close to 200 lineal feet by the time they're all done. Goes from the back corner of the house on either side out to the lot line.
Yep.
Then down the lot line to,
that whole
roughly 10 feet away from the pavement and across the front yard. It staggers the driveway as well as the walk in the front.
Yeah, it's not a foundation planting, it's really acting as a
It's a border
property
planting.
line barrier almost.
All right, do you want to take care of some minutes?
Yeah. So I'm just getting that you're, in general, kind of not in favor of privet in any, just you prefer them to use the natives.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
That's fine. Yeah, we got 2 sets of minutes. Trying to catch up. You wanna do October 17th?
That one goes way back, that was a
Yeah,
long
we're
meeting.
getting,
That was a big one. I've been through them both, I have no comments, except for, if you don't mind, this is a little bit odd, but could you tack chairman at some point next to my name?
Of course.
I do feel, I know it's kind of self-serving, huh?
No, you're right.
The minutes should identify who chaired the
Yes,
meeting.
it should.
I will do that. Add chairman. Sorry about that.
No, it's kind of silly, but good for the minutes to identify that.
No, we should know who the chairman is and people who are leading them years down the road. They have nothing else better to
Those
do.
poor souls.
Okay.
I had no comments on either one.
I don't either.
Oh, good.
You want to move together on it?
Any comments, any more time?
No.
Well, I move that we accept the minutes for October 17th, 2018, and April 3rd, 2019.
No, that's
March
today.
20th.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God, I did it again. I'm looking at the clock just saying, okay, I've been up a long time.
Yep.
Well, let me revise that. That's terrible. So, accept the minutes for March 20, 2019, and October 17, 2018.
It was a nice job.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
All those still watching, sorry.
And
I
adjourn.
move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.